Okay, here we go. Welcome everyone to my regular Wednesday night live stream. Tonight's live was the idea of Noah Revoy. I feel the need to make that point. It was not my idea, but I'm happy to do it, which is the lack of why the right has man children with no leadership. So that's a pretty good term to use. And this concept actually works with all types of men, but we're focusing on a particular group this time around. But I will have Riccardo back to talk about that specifically another time. I would like to introduce Noah Revoy, Life Coach, Riccardo Bosi, retired Lieutenant Colonel, and Dean McCrae, Liberal Democrat and troublemaker.
I try. How are you going, guys?
Hey, Dean.
Good to see you all again. Such pretty people.
We have one side with beards and one side without.
What do you mean Claudia's beard's lovely?
I like my beard. All right, let me just read a Bible verse and then we'll get stuck into it. Matthew chapter 6, verse 34. Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. That's kind of fitting. All right. I don't know if you guys are aware, but I did a slideshow for this particular live stream. So I'm going to put the live stream, the slideshow up, and then we can talk about the topics that come up. And then that's how today's show will be. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. Give me a sec. So I go here. Share. All right, ready? Can you guys still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, so why study real leadership? Your family's very life, liberty, and happiness depend on it. This is all from Riccardo's book. Who's going to lead your family if you don't? Your family needs your leadership to stay strong, independent, and free from the countless threats, dangers, and negative influences out there in the world in order to create a life of abundance, joy, and achievement. And leadership, the definition, a real leader is one who, using nothing but what they are, unites many to achieve good. And then I'll do the second slide, and then after that, we'll talk about it. Qualities needed for leadership. Trust. The definition, trust is the assured reliance that what was promised will be. Be honest. Definition, to be honest is to think, say, and do what is true. To be competent is to execute your responsibilities according to the required standard. To be measured is to be calm, deliberate, and firm. And to be loyal is to protect that which is worthy. So I'll stop sharing for the moment, and I would like you guys to comment on all of those issues regarding people, because I don't think the right neither does the left, but we're talking about the right, has those qualities. Did you want to start, Riccardo, because those are your words?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having us on. The key point there is who's going to lead if you don't. It's not a committee system. Circumstances demand it. Your children require it. And the nation is built upon families. That's why it starts with the family. And the principles in the book about leadership apply to a mum and dad as much as they apply to a chief executive. They are absolutely identical. The scope and scale might be different, but the basic skill sets are identical. And so it is absolutely essential. The waiting for someone to come and rescue you is not a strategy for life. Your kids don't want to see you sitting there waiting for orders from somebody else. They expect you to step up and be the hero you are required to be. And you're required to be a hero to them, simply because you are their first role model. You're the measure. Now, you will inevitably disappoint them because that's life. But you've got to give them the best possible start, and then they can, as they individuate from you as young adults, they'll see you in a better light and a more balanced light. They'll understand exactly that you are doing your best. But there is a minimum standard you've got to get to. You really must. we can talk about trust next, but let's just leave it there at that stage. But it is an absolute fundamental for every mum and dad and every individual. Because even if you don't have kids, you've got to lead yourself.
Yes.
Waiting for orders is not a good place to be.
Well, and if you're a man and you're you don't have children, you're probably participating in some sort of a male hierarchy. At least you should be. Otherwise, you're not developing as a man. And within that hierarchy, there will be various leadership roles. Almost everyone, except for the newest members, are going to have some sort of responsibility to lead within the organization or to lead a project. And so it's important to understand that. And I think one of the reasons there is a lack of leadership is we no longer have as many male hierarchies as we used to have. You used to be able to go to church and you would get assignments. You used to have men's associations. There used to be more participation in military. And men used to work mostly with other men and organized into a hierarchy, which taught leadership to the men below, because one of the most important jobs of a leader is cultivating leadership in the men below him so that they can replace him or grow the organization. And we're missing that nowadays. We've become these rootless, disconnected, cosmopolitan people that are not part of any kind of a group that is structured and organized. And when we do get into groups, it's tiny, it's chaotic, and they don't tend to last because there's no real leadership.
That's blatantly clear. Dean, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, look, of course. Now, I haven't read all of Riccardo's book yet, but all of those, everything you put on that slide makes perfect sense. And I think it's important to realise that there are different styles of leadership. Obviously, the three men on this panel are all very different, as you stated in your little ad that I saw you sharing around there. But I think we all have similar. There's a similar core quality, and there's a desire to lead from the front, and you've got to be willing to take risks. That's something that modern men aren't brave enough to do, is to step up and go, I will risk my reputation. I will risk being called names. I'll risk in this day and age losing a job, losing a house, losing monetary rewards, all based on the way that society's set up. So there's a lot of risk that you've got to be brave enough to take on, and I think it's that risk that has helped minimise the amount of men willing to stand and lead. I'm probably the most left-leaning out of the three gentlemen on here as a libertarian, but I find a lot in common with these guys because of those reasons, I think.
All right, we'll move on to the next slide. Give me a sec. Oh, come on. Sorry. This one. All right, so hang on, that one. All right, so we did that one. Give me a sec. All right, so the next one is the first pillar is your character, and that I actually believe is what is lost. That is what is lost.
You need to pass on to the next one.
What was
it? You need to physically go to the next slide before you explain it.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Character is the set of physical, emotional, mental, and moral virtues that distinguishes one individual from another. Courage, you act in the face of fear. Wisdom, you apply knowledge and experience with common sense and insight. Faith, you believe despite the absence of evidence and act on the belief. And love, you create from a from a desire to give. What is that noise? Can you guys hear that noise?
Not at my end.
Yeah, I hear something in the background. I had my mic muted, so it wasn't me.
Okay. Well, okay. So what I believe what is lost on the right, and obviously on the left, but is character. Because people like to make the claim that someone else doesn't have all those things, and pile on, whether it be Lauren Southern, whether it be Tommy Laren, but then seem to forget about the fact that what they're doing isn't isn't honorable. Does anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, I want to mention something about that, especially since I made a post too about Tommy Lauren's video.
Okay.
Now, I think that it's one thing, and that you mentioned pile-on. So the problem with, and the left has the same problem, is when you get to there is the ineffective right. They're the ones that are talkers, and there is effective right-wing people as well, who are accomplishing things, who are managing their communities. I know people who are on the right who are organizing their communities, organizing militias, organizing help for orphans and widows and things like this. And then there's the ineffective right.
Yeah.
and you know, but if they are, the ones who are doing that are not publicizing it.
No.
Because they don't want to set opposition against them. They're smart. They're working quietly on their own to accomplish things rather than looking for fame. Now, part of the reason why we have problems on right or the left, why we have problems in society today, is because people are offering criticism without solutions. And that's not a very masculine way. When we talking leadership, we're usually talking about male leadership. And the masculine way of dealing with problems is not criticize and run away. It is offer a solution. Yes, we offer a solution, and then we explain why our solution is better than the existing solution. And we don't criticize unless we have a better idea than what's out there. And the reason for that is we've seen this with the undermining of society in general. So the left particularly has been notorious for undermining. The undermining came to the right probably in the last 10, 15 years. Before that, it was more focused on productivity and families. And a lot of that is members from the left moving over to the right and bringing they've changed their political ideas, but they haven't changed their process of attempting to change the world. They're still in the culture of critique. And so they want to change things by complaining. But complaining doesn't make the world better. Solutions make the world better, and even better than solutions are actions. You have to go and take actions in the real world and say, I have built this. This is better than what exists. Come and partake of what I have built, and you're going to be better off. This is how every successful business works. That is not using some sort of government command in order to get their product bought. But all of the innovative businesses, they come and they say that what existed before is no longer suitable. I have something better. And if they're right, people will buy the new and better thing. And this is the only way that politics is capable of actually improving life, is if those who are promoting ideas promote better ideas of governance rather than merely attacking the existing ideas.
Anyone want to build off of that?
Go on, Dean.
No, you're right, Riccardo. Go for it. Aren't we all very gentlemanly?
Well, they say that testosterone, high levels of testosterone are highly correlated with cooperation in pro-social situations, which means testosterone allows men to cooperate better than, say, estrogen does. I'll give you a little story on that.
Yeah.
I was sitting in a traffic jam once, and there were two lanes there was obviously something going wrong ahead because it was crawling slowly. It was peak hour. People were getting frustrated, and there was a problem. And as I inched my way forward, I saw that there in the left-hand lane was a woman whose car was broken down. And we'd been there for about maybe 20, 25 minutes trying to get past. I put the handbrake on, opened my door. We're all stationary. And literally within no more than 15 seconds, 6 other guys, when they saw me open my door, they opened their door without a word being exchanged. We all took on a separate role. I moved straight to the car, but somebody got there before me to help me. So I then started diverting traffic. Another gentleman got onto the footpath, moved the passengers out of the way. The car was rolled down onto the footpath, and we got back. The whole problem was fixed in 30 seconds. We got back in our cars. Not a word was exchanged between any of us, not even that manly sort of a nod. We just got back in and drove away. So
that's good.
It's an interesting position that men react and behave and lead differently, which has been poo-pooed and dismayed and worried about and criticised breathtakingly. We do, in fact, as Noah said, we fix things. And that's what causes dramas between husbands and wives. The wife says, oh my God, look at that beautiful house. And we feel terrible because what we think she's saying is, you're inadequate because you haven't bought me a beautiful house yet. So we're going to kill ourselves trying to buy the house. But all they're doing is they're complimenting an object, but we take it as a need for advice. Similarly, she'll come home and something's gone wrong at the office and she'll complain about it, quite rightly, because she has cause for complaint. And of course, we're sitting there as husbands trying to fix the problem. Well, she doesn't want it fixed. She just wants to talk about it. But we need to fix it. That starts another fight. So we fix things. And that's the way we look at life. We don't complain. A guy that whinges is just that. And in a reasonably tight group, you'll be recalibrated quickly if you whinge and don't offer a solution. And the political party that we're starting, Australia One, that's exactly what we did. We looked at the problem. We have built a comprehensive solution to every problem that they've got. And people say to me, oh, it's terrible. What can we do? And I go, easy. Here's a solution, and here's a solution, and here's a solution, and here's a solution. And the proofs of Noah's theory is in the pudding, because people are looking at A1 and saying, I like this. And what's interesting is it's neither left nor right. It's just right and wrong. This works.
I love that. That's what I say to people, and then they get angry at me saying, oh, you think you've transcended beyond the paradigm, do you? I'm like, it's not that I've transcended. It's just that I don't care about left and right anymore. It's just retarded. It's obsolete now, isn't it?
It doesn't work. And I can tell you, we've got old Labor and old Liberal, which in the Australian context, Noah, is like Democrat and Republican, but the old style before the left invaded everything. And they sit extremely comfortably alongside each other. They really do. And they have absolutely no problem. So Noah's exactly right. Men fix things. That's the way we're designed and built. And there's a biological basis to it, as well as a cultural and a social and a psychological basis. Because if you've got your pointy stick and you've got 6 other guys and you have to bring down the bison, let's go back a couple of 100,000 years, whinging doesn't help. You need to bring the bison down. You need results.
That's
posting about it on Facebook will help though, Riccardo. If you want to bring the bison down, you've got to tap away at it on your phone.
That's it. And that's it. So results matter, and we fix stuff. And that's the way we are. And we have to acknowledge that we are, whilst we're equal in our rights, we are certainly not equal in our temperaments or capabilities with women. We're just different, and we complement each other.
And generally, when a man is whinging, it causes great disgust responses from women. They find it disgusting because they know that he's not going to fit in on that hunting pack. He's not going to be the producer. He's essentially doing, and the same behavior coming from a woman would be okay. The woman can say, look, there's not enough food for the kids. Oh, the tent's got a leak in it. We got to fix it, and our primitive ancestors. And that was okay. When a man whinges like that, the women get a visceral disgust. I spoke to my wife about a conversation I had with this man and him whinging away. And I can see the look on her face of, get the curl in the lip. It's disgusting. And men also find that type of behavior disgusting. And the more masculine you are, the more disgusting you find that behavior. The reason being is that we know taking a complainer on a hunt or on a mission of any sort as men is a liability to the group. And they're also men must have an almost overly confident, overly optimistic view of the opportunities that are facing us, because we're, historically, we literally go out each day and face death to hunt something for our family. And so we had to be incredibly optimistic. And if we have someone that's constantly complaining and pulling us down, it impacts the spirit of the group, and it makes the whole group lose effectiveness. The spirit of the core is very important for male groups and for their success. And generally, the ineffective right is almost 100% men. There's very few women in the ineffective right. It's maybe 10%. The effective right, I see a lot more women involved, because they tend to be more attracted to those kind of men who can get things done, who can accomplish things. And so we see a different dynamic there. And one of the ways that you can identify people who are on the ineffective right is if they're not offering solutions, and you can see the effective people, right, left, center, whatever, they're offering solutions that can actually be accomplished in the real world.
Which one of you is using speakers? I don't know.
I'm sure.
All right. So okay, keep going. Sorry, keep going. Unless you want to build off of what he said, what Noah said, Dean. You haven't spoken much.
Well, from what Noah was just saying, or before actually, when he was talking about community, the whole key with leadership, it doesn't have to start at the top. And I mean, when I say start at the top, obviously there are men who are going to lead the country. There are men who are going to lead military platoons, guys like Riccardo. There are guys who should be leading their local soccer club, their local football club, their local school, their local church. And I'm not a religious guy, as you all know, but there's a great big hole in all of these areas. And I've seen it because I found myself kind of going, well, why hasn't that been done? I'll just go and do it. Not to blow my horn, but to say that why aren't more men doing these things?
Because it's more entertaining to attack me.
Well, look, and we all know how I feel about the attacks on you that I've seen lately. I mean, it's childish crap, for lack of a better term. And one of the arguments that I had during that whole period of time when all those things were going on that really sort of hurt me was Riccardo and I were both involved in a federal election. There were 14 people in the country at the time who were nominated in this federal election. 14 out of 26 million were involved in this election. So they're not bad odds, and 2 of them are in this room, Riccardo. So, you know, when you just look at that, there's some value in that in and of itself, because it takes courage to stand up and be willing to put yourself out there. But when all that nonsense was going on, my biggest question was, apart from the fact that I had Riccardo number 2 on my ticket, I was supporting the most conservative man, as far as I'm concerned, that was in that election. He got my second vote. And I got a bit of blowback, you got a bit of blowback, Riccardo probably got plenty of blowback. And I suppose my question was, all the people that were spending this time harassing you, of all people, and I don't want to be belittling you, but really there are bigger fish to fry, should have been out there handing out flyers, should have been out there trying to help get, probably not myself because I'm more libertarian than right wing as such, but they certainly should have. Yeah, but they should have been out behind, if they were doing more than just talking online, which is really nonsense, they should have been out saying, Riccardo, you're the most conservative bloke in this thing. We claim to be right-wingers. We claim to be conservatives. How can we help, mate? What can we do for you? Instead, they were playing childish games with you online, and I lost an awful lot of respect for a lot of these guys, because up until that point, I'd always thought, well, you know, there's some merit to them. They're young guys. They're having a bit of a crack, but they're not having a crack. They're talking online. And to me, that was really a wasted opportunity. And I met a lot of Riccardo's volunteers, and to be perfectly honest, most of them were almost elderly, Riccardo. Correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly the ones that I met were borderline elderly. And there's an awful lot of young guys claiming to be right-wing who should have been jumping on their bike. I had 40 or 50 libertarians come up from all over the country. We had guys from Queensland come down to try and support and help hand out flyers. Now, it didn't alter the voting so much. But one, there's a little bit of libertarian respect for my style of leadership in the libertarian field. I do it a bit differently, but I would have liked to have seen a hell of a lot more of these guys that talk all day on Facebook and YouTube and Telegram and whatever the hell the other ones are. Contact Riccardo, even if they're not going to support me, and say, how can we get behind you, mate? You're what we claim to be. You've lived it, and you're not doing it. You know, for me, it was a bit disappointing to see out of the right.
Anyone else want to build off of that?
Well, if you actually show up and you support something you believe in, then you have skin in the game, and that means you have to invest into it. That means you have to take risks that you may not have taken before. And if you are a whinger, you're probably not a man who is okay with taking risks and getting out there and getting your hands dirty and doing work.
Are they even men?
And, yes, and well, yes, and the point is one of the questions, you know, we've been talking about the problem, and let's talk about the root cause a little bit. The root cause, from my experience in men not knowing how to lead, is that they never learned how from their fathers. So our father should lead us, which gives us the capacity to follow, because you can't be a leader until you can first follow, because you have no understanding of how to organize groups. So hopefully you see your father and he leads, at minimum, your family. You know, maybe your father is more of an alpha type guy who leads also the community. That's great. Now you're going to see it on a broader scale. If not, your father is going to make sure that he is in a male hierarchy where he has men leading him that you can use as examples of leadership as well. And it's not just our father, it's his entire male group that is around him that gives us examples as young men. When we miss out on that, and about half of young men today are raised without a father figure. In fact, they often have not a single responsible adult male in their life until they become adults themselves. So they don't have this template of what is a leader supposed to be, how is a leader function, and how do you participate with a leader in a group. And because they're missing that, they don't have the capacity as adults to lead themselves. But Riccardo, a lot of young men entering the military are in the same position. The military has training to teach men how to follow. Because I this is a common problem in all militaries, is that young men coming in, they want to do their own thing. They think they're hot. They think they can do whatever they want, and they come in and they don't understand how to cooperate and work together. And one of the most important things is creating cohesion in the military structure. And then there are training programs to teach men with capacity how to become leaders. We can implement something similar in a cultural level outside of the military, in a civilian level, to lead young men, those responsible, mature men like the three of us.
That's stupid.
I hate women so much that I've spent thousands of hours helping them to have better and happier lives, and helping the men in their lives to be better
You're my
leaders.
life coach.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Do you feel during our sessions that I hate you?
All I feel is hatred seeping from your eyes. No,
yeah,
obviously not.
Yeah, I bitch slap her at the beginning of every session. No, it is that lack of fatherhood investment in children that we must overcome in society, and we must do that by us mature men training younger men who then go out and train more men, and it will spread out exponentially. But at the moment, the system that we live in is specifically designed to take away from men that agency and that leadership capacity, to keep them weak and fragile so that they can be manipulated by society. And it's not going to be those young men that solve the problem. They have to humble themselves and come to the older men for training and for guidance. And hey, look, if you see an older man running a political campaign that has ideas that are close to what you believe in, this is your opportunity to be led and find out what leadership really is, and your opportunity to mature as a young man.
Before anyone speaks, and maybe Riccardo can speak next, this is a passage out of his book that's perfect for right now. It's on page 119. Whenever I see these folks, I feel like giving them the same advice I was given a long time ago when I was one of those belly achers, which was shut up and do something about it. If you are one whose natural inclination is to take action, good, have at it. If not, the good news is that you can become action oriented. The two most effective techniques that I have found, particularly when used together, are firstly to develop an internal locus of control, which gives you the choice to act, and secondly, to elevate one's consciousness, which gives you the will to act. I reckon that's super relevant. Did you want to speak on that, Riccardo? Very bubbly. Can't hear you. Riccardo, we can't hear you.
Is that better?
Got scared. Okay, cool.
There you go. The internal locus of control. It just means the place of control, and it's quite simple. You're either a victim or you're not. And there are always circumstances we find ourselves in which are disempowering. And you have a choice. You either say, I'm a victim, there's nothing I can do, I'm stuck. Or you can say, well, it's not my fault I'm here, but I'm certainly responsible to get out. So that's the first step. It's my job to get me out. Nobody else. It's my job. The next bit to that is simple in the sense that you've got to reframe it. If I chose this set of circumstances to learn something, what could it be? If I chose this exact set of circumstances, it's a bit of a mental trick you play with yourself, because it's only a problem because you don't know how to solve it. Because once you know how to solve a problem, it's not a problem anymore. You just do it. It's like a baby can't walk. Getting from point A to point B is a big problem till they learn to walk. And so when they learn how to walk, they still have to get from point A to point B, but it's not a problem. So you play these little games with yourself to get yourself going, but you've got to take responsibility. It's my job to get myself out. And if I knew how to get myself out, I would be. So let's learn. That's the first part. The second part is raising your consciousness, the will to act, the will. And there are 4 stages to it, and I try to simplify things as much as possible. Obviously, it's a far more complex issue than this, but to keep it simple. When you live for yourself like most single men do, you live in fear. And that's what it is. Because you've got stuff, you're afraid people will take it away. You're not sure exactly who you are yet because you're living for yourself.
That's so true.
And so that's the first step, and that's natural. Everyone starts there. You live in fear as a child. Then you get married and you have children, and that's I give that example because that's the most visceral of responsibilities you can possibly have. You just can't decide one day, well, I've had a gut full of my kids, I'm going to leave now. Some guys do, and that's not great. But then you start to live for somebody else. But it's immediate and it's real and it's your own flesh and blood. And so you begin to sacrifice. And that's a good thing because that's required. That's part of life. And you have a duty, which means you've got to do what you've got to do regardless. So you start to live with somebody else, for somebody else. And now you're living in the world of courage because you're going to have to do things because you've got little guys looking up at you saying, well, Dad, what are we going to do now? And you have to step forward into the unknown because this is a brand new world and every new mum and dad knows this feeling. That's the second level of the will to act instead of whinging. The third one is when you evolve to the point where you are now living for an ideal. Now, this is more difficult for people because it's vague and it's woolly, and you say I'm willing to die for liberty. Well, you might say, but very few are, because I think I'd prefer a nice, comfortable bed. But when you get to that third level and you are willing to risk all for a disassociated concept, then you're really in the world of faith. But when I say faith, I mean faith in yourself. You can't prove it. It's not provable, but you think it's doable and you risk it. So now you're going to do something on faith because this, a concept of liberty or a concept of free speech or whatever it might be, you're going to risk it for something that you can't prove. It's now in the realm of faith. That's the third level. And the last one, and this is where real fearlessness comes into it. And for all the young men out there, if you want, there's an old saying, go big or go home. You want to go big? This is it. And there's a story that I tell in my sessions about where this fearlessness comes from. And in reality, and I won't tell you the story, but I'll give you the punchline. What looks like courage to most people is nothing but love in action. That's it.
That's good.
What looks like courage is love in action. And I can tell you, having spent 24 years in the military, and the soldiers do the most incredible stuff. And Noah's dead right. We're optimistic. I'm not going to get hit. The guy next to me might, but I'm not. But that to one side, soldiers are motivated. If you told them this, they wouldn't believe you. They'd say, oh, get out of it. No, I'm not. But what they do for love of country, love of family, love of the mate next to them, because they're in a hairy situation. They've got to get out. But that's where real fearlessness comes from. And when you love, and you've transcended the love of your children, and you've transcended the love of an ideal, and now you love the Almighty, you find God, and that is the wellspring from which everything comes.
Except
Dean. And then, he'll get there one day. Dean doesn't believe in God, but God believes in Dean, so that's all right.
Yay!
When you tap into that, if the decision to move, the decision to act is simple. Effort might be required, but the decision to do what's got to be done because it's got to be done is you are utterly fearless. And it looks like fearlessness, and it's not. It's just the highest form of love you can possibly imagine. And that's where it comes from. That's the highest form that taps in, that gives you the will to act in the face of the most horrendous odds.
There's a General Mathis quote where he says that I'm getting feedback when I speak. So, are you guys all muted? Okay. There's a General Mathis quote where he comes and he's talking to, I think, some Afghani tribals, and he's saying to them, he says, I'm coming to you with tears in my eyes to tell you that if you shoot at my people, we're going to have to kill you all. He's like, I don't want to do this, but if you make me, I'm going to blow you off the face of the earth. And that is, he's not doing that from any hatred for those people. He's doing that out of love for his own men that he's responsible for. He feels like a father to them. And this is why the father motif is very useful in leadership, is because it helps you to cultivate a good frame for leadership. And that concern for the people you lead is partially, that is the responsibility of the leader, but it's also, if you want to have a leader who cares about you like that, you have to be a worthy follower of that leader. You have to be worth caring about as well. And so there's a lot of complaining about a lack of leadership. We also have a tragic lack of capacity to follow. Excuse me. A lot of men do not know how to follow a leader. They don't know how to be loyal. They don't know, understand how to deal with internal leadership problems. If you have a problem with your leader, you don't put it on blast publicly. They don't understand how to deal with chains of command. They don't understand how to work with other men under a leader. They don't understand how to follow orders that they don't understand. If you trust the leader and he has a record of experience at success with you, sometimes you have to trust that you don't know the whole plan and you still have to work with him. And this is really lacking on the right. And we won't have good leaders emerge that become popular and powerful until the level of our ability to follow them increases as well. And that is partially a humility thing and is partially a training thing. We have to cultivate the right high virtue mindset in order to follow a high virtue leader, or we just won't get one.
It's funny you should say that, Noah, because Twitter, Facebook, and the other social media outlets that we use to get our message out there, they're generally pretty polite. I'm pretty lucky. I don't get many trolls. I can't understand why. But what I do get, which I find extremely interesting, is I'll get young men, and with the most inappropriate tonality, they shove an electronic finger in my face and say, well, what the hell have you done?
I saw a little video, Riccardo, Dia shared it. It was probably the most aggressive or angry I've ever seen you. And I must admit, I got all warm and fuzzy because I was like, thank God he's finally said it, because it's 100% correct. You put your balls on the line and you've got some guy in a chat room somewhere who wants to know what you've done or what risks you've taken to achieve the things you have. And I must admit, I was so warm and fuzzy seeing you fire back the way you did. I thought it was brilliant. And as usual, mate, it was just spot on the money and exactly the way to deal with the hidden keyboard warriors that we get to experience by being front and center on some of these topics.
Yeah, and they attack Dia because, see, Dia is nice and soft. When they attack men, strong men, they get blasted back. And this is something I think they're not used to, because they're used to, basically, it's a bunch of children bullying each other, and they're not used to a masculine response to that. And you'll notice that you'll see a lot of, there's people saying, oh, Noah's a cult leader and Noah's this and Noah's that in the comments.
They're attacking you because you're my friend, and all of you are my friends. And somehow I've manipulated all three of you, because none of you, I somehow I'm a mastermind, and you three don't know anything about psychology, and I'm just a manipulative bitch.
I've seen you try and cook chips in water, Dull, and I don't think you're that dangerous, to tell you the truth.
I'm not, but they give me so much power. I'm so powerful. I took down the Liberal Party, and apparently I took down the far right. And how powerful am I? Tell me.
Well, it's all of these attacks are because they don't actually have something of value to offer. So they use what I call GSRRM. So they gossip, they rally, they shame, and they attempt to avoid dealing with the actual problem because they have no ability to deal with the problem. So instead, they try to. He's
joking. I think he's joking.
Yeah, I think so. They try to distract you from the problem with personal attacks, and they're used to that working because they're used to dealing with immature people, and that doesn't work on us as men. We know how to push aside the distractions and get things done, and it's not as effective on us.
Did you want to say something, Riccardo? because, you know, I've apparently manipulated you too, and, you know.
Oh, no, it's just, Noah's on the run. And just
Yeah.
so he's we were talking about policy, and there's a lot of pushback, as you say, from the keyboard warriors. And I actually feel sorry for them. I used the present participle of a word to procreate, let's say, that begins with an F, about 12 times in 15 seconds. But that's a very military way of communicating when I lost my temper with the line of questioning. But I feel sorry for them because there's reasons why they are the way they are. And Noah's touched on some very key ones. But it's amazing. From soy milk through to lack of a father in the household, all of these things are contributing on a daily basis to turning what should be hard, decisive, capable, soft, caring protectors of the innocent, whether they're male or female is irrelevant, this is a sexist issue, turning them into something else, and they've never had to fight for anything in their lives. I mean, the biggest challenge for them is where they get a slice of lemon with their frappuccino. And it's just, it's embarrassing. One of the best jobs I had in the military, and I mean this, and I've served in some pretty exciting places, was at the recruit training battalion. And this is a few years back now. And so civilian boys would turn up, and 17, 18, 19 years of age, long hair, bad attitude. And we'd get them to stand on the yellow feet, painted onto the ground, and would say, okay, and everyone, the corporal would swing around, gentlemen, turn to your left. No shouting or yelling, just turn to your left, and they'd shuffle around. And then they'd start walking up the hill. And the first thing we'd do, the very first thing we do, and I tell you what is the single most psychologically powerful event in recruit training, is we march them up to the barber shop and we take a before and after photograph. And the before shot is a bunch of 48, because each training platoon has 48 soldiers, hard men, hard 17 and 18-year-olds that know it all, and they're staring down the camera saying, you can't break me. And then we put them in, and the barber politely asks, what sort of haircut would you like? And then promptly gives them a number 1. And they all look like dicks with ears by the time they come out, and they know it. And we take a second photograph, and then we give them the photographs for nothing. And the before and the after shot is just breathtaking, the difference. The first one is they're all hard men. And in the second one, they've got these silly grins on their faces, realizing they look utterly ridiculous because their sense of self has now been so utterly shaken and shifted. That face that they look at has gone. And we now have a blank slate. And in the best possible way, because we've done nothing to them physically or psychologically, we've just changed their view of themselves. And 12 weeks later, the same story every time. And this I can guarantee you, I put a lot of platoons through, and then I was promoted to company second in command, and I got to watch even more platoons go through. But at the end of training barbecue, it was identical. The father would come up to us, the instructors, and sort of look at us sideways, tilt his head, stick his hand out and say, mate, you did in 12 weeks what I couldn't do in 18 years. Because they were now polite, they were well-mannered, they were strong, tall, fit, caring. They'd ask their mother, excuse me, Mum, would you like a cup of coffee with some sandwiches? And they would wait on their parents as we briefed them to do.
Oh.
And so that was the dad's response, and the mum's response was also identical. What have you done to my little boy? And so what we did was, in that 12 weeks, which is quite unique, was we stripped the bullshit out of their lives and we showed them what they were capable of. Because there's nothing, it's pretty tough. Recruit training is not easy. A lot of people get in for starters and fewer finish. But we've shown them their capability. We haven't bastardized them, we haven't brutalized them, but we've stripped the rubbish away and we've actually shown them you are capable of so much more. And they are. And the instructors, as you said, Noah, the instructors show them what a real man is, and a real man is many things. It's not what the feminazis and the idiots who have never served 10 seconds in uniform think it is. But they're some of the best men I've ever met in my life. And I'll tell you what, I'm not a fan of conscription because I've got a big libertarian streak a mile wide. That's why Dean and I get on so well. I gave him my second preference too. So here we go, the most conservative and the most libertarian, actually preferencing each other above everybody else. I just thought it was funny. But that was the honesty between us. But I'm not a big fan of conscription, but I can tell you what, it'd do the country, the men particularly, and some women, but the men particularly, it would fill a gap that has been removed from them in just about every aspect of their lives, from the shows on TVs to, there's so much more that you can go into about why men are suffering the way they are. But it's a wonderful example of showing them what they can be, and after that, the world's theirs.
Can I just quickly put on the video, because I don't think no one knows what you were talking about, Dean, and I think it'd be good for Noah to see it.
Please don't.
Just really? You don't want me to put it on?
No,
just like
go on.
30
away
seconds?
You go. No, away
Okay.
you go.
It was a good 2 minutes. It was pretty good.
I'll put on 30 seconds. Give me a sec.
Okay.
Sorry, I know you're embarrassed, but it was good. Wait, is that the right? Yeah. Oh, hang on. Give me a second. I'm so incompetent. Okay, we'll go here. Share. Okay, and then it's this one. Can you all see it?
No.
Can you hear it or not?
Nope.
You can't. Okay, give me a second. I have to take it off a certain setting. So I go camera mic, cam mic. I go to audio and I go, I don't know. I might not be. Give me a sec. Okay.
We could always get Riccardo to mock it up and we'll just do a replay. I mean, we could always do that.
Is it not working?
Not yet.
It's all right. It's not working. It's fine.
See, there is a God and he loves me.
All right. Well, it's everywhere. It kind of sort of it's doing the rounds. But let's go back to the slides. All right. So we're going to go from current slide. The second pillar is your capability. Capability is the power to achieve a goal when, where, and how you decide to do so. Show them what great looks like. Use competitive intelligence. Know who's there, how many, what are their intentions, strengths, weaknesses, needs, wants, and sensitivities, the status of their morale, how they can harm you and how they can help you. And the last dot point for this is a warning: fragmentation of conscience. Virtue is an individual trait, not a collective one. Doesn't exist on the right. And it is imperative that each individual in every organization be held accountable for the actions he or she takes. Yeah. Did you not see that? Oh, sorry. I thought you all saw that. Well, anyway, I read it out, so
Your face is frozen and we didn't see it.
Oh, okay.
The key portion of what you just read out there, which is obviously Riccardo's words, but the bit that sticks out for me is the responsibility part, the accountability part. And as a libertarian, obviously, you get a lot of heat from people who go, well, you guys just think you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. And that's a savage misunderstanding of what libertarianism is. And in saying that, there are probably some libertarians who fail massively in that arena and do literally think that it's just do what you want when you want. But I mean, for those who I sort of think get it right, are in the field of accountability, and they're in the field of, yeah, look, I want, as a really good example, I don't want to pay anywhere near as much tax, right? I look at tax and I think, why should I be forced to pay for some services that I may or may not want? Now, there's no opt-out. There's no opt-out key. You can't ring your local government and say, look, I'd like to opt out of all your services, thank you. I don't require them. I'm quite happy to live my own life without your inclusions. And we don't have that option. And a lot of people go, well, how would you use the roads? What if you got sick and wanted to use the hospital? Well, the argument there, I guess, from my personal perspective in that field would be, well, if you keep all of the tax of the money you keep, well, you're obligated to pay your own medical bills, or you pay as you use the road. So okay, you might have to, that's your registration or whatever. There is still a level of accountability that's highly valuable. in a libertarian world. But of course, when you're arguing with people on usually the far left and even the far right, because I do have some fantastic debates with some of the young lads who, well, we need government to tell us what to do, and so, you don't listen anyway, guys. I hate to hurt your heart, but it's really valuable to be able to say we like an opt-out, but these are the responsibilities that I'm incurring instead of farming that responsibility out to the government. And I think that's a big part of where men are losing out majorly in the country, is that accountability, that independence. It's been stripped away over years. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I'd say to Dad, Dad would want to build a shed or something. And he was a very, very handy man with those sort of things. And, I've got to go and get permission from council. And I remember as a young lad still baffled. Why have you got to go and ask them whether you can build a shed? You know how to build a shed, Dad, just build the shed. Oh, well, you've got to get permission. And it always confused me. So I don't think this libertarian streak's anything new for me. But when you look at these things, why does he need to do that? He has the capability of building this. Why does he need the permission from some bureaucrat in an office somewhere to tell him whether or not he has the capabilities to do these things? So when you look at a lot of these things, it's that accountability. Dad wanted responsibility and the accountability of doing it, and he still had to get somebody else's permission, which I always found a challenge. And if we could set it up where more men were actually accountable, take responsibility. Yes, it's your problem to solve. You can't go to your local government to solve that problem. You can't go. You know what I mean? It would, in my brain, it would make men far stronger, far more independent, and hence far more capable of looking after their families and those around them. Now, I could be wrong. Noah's a life coach. Riccardo's a former military sergeant, if I'm correct, Riccardo. I've been a professional chef and I've been in business and whatever. But it's all
You're
about.
just Dean.
I'm just Dean. Yeah, that's right. But it's about that level of accountability. I think that if you, for some reason, we've replaced the man in the household, the man in the community with government. And I think that's really, really weakened the position of males in society. I could be wrong, lads. If I am, feel free to spank.
You're absolutely right, Dean. You're absolutely right. There's actually been a concerted effort to undermine our agency for over 100 years. And it's not just been that we have massive amounts of conveniences. It's been that we go to school as children, and the natural way that children learn is by exploring the world. And that's a very self-directed activity. You go out, you're a young kid, young boy, you go out with your dog and a stick and you explore the backyard and you learn about what's in your neighborhood. You learn about animals. You run around with a bunch of other young boys, learn how to cooperate with them and get stuff done. You basically run with your little wolf pack. Now, instead of that, we go and spend, sometimes 20 years in school. And you sit at a desk and you're told what to do and you're told what to think and you're told when you can take a piss and when you can't, and you're told, there's a buzzer, so that's kind of like training a dog. There's a buzzer that goes off that tells you it's time to stand up and move to another room. And we go through that for more than a decade, up to 2 decades. And it's designed to strip away our agency, our ability to have self-directed learning, our ability to direct our own lives. On top of that, we have a direct attack on masculinity, which is a direct attack on our ability to follow and to lead. So whenever a young boy is displaying masculine characteristics, he's told that he's being defective and he's got toxic masculinity. And, he often goes to school for the first 5-6 years without encountering a single male teacher who might support his more masculine behavior. There is scientific studies that show that young boys actually don't hear what women say after the age of 7. We literally, all we hear is wah, 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 because we're tuned to the male register, because we want to hear when our father or some other male from the tribe says, there's a tiger in town, get the women to safety. And right from 7 up, the boys are starting to listen over all the women's nattering and screaming. What is dad shouting that we need to do? And so we're tuned to the male register, and we don't, female teachers for young boys is counterproductive in most cases, because they can't listen to her. It's not interesting for them. We also, school system is designed for quiet, calm, indoor, gentle, soft, cooperative play. Whereas boys, they want to get out there and roughhouse and builds things and smash things and, you know, divide into two teams so they can compete, even if the other side's their friend. And, you know, they want to box each other. And this is how boys want to learn and how boys want to grow in society. And we're not allowed to do that because that is too hard for the female teachers to manage. And we're not doing enough to attract masculine men into this teaching profession. I don't think we will ever do that. I think the actual solution is to defund public schools. You know, people talk about defunding the police as if the police were the problem. We defunded public schools, we'd have a lot less violence in society than defunding the police. And yeah, make bullying great again. You know, the one thing bullying taught me in school, being bullied, and it taught me that the only solution to violence is more violence. And especially if you can cooperate with other kids that are getting bullied to deal with the bully yourself. So federated violence. There are lessons we learn in school, but mostly it's designed to squish us into a box. And if you learn anything, it's incidental. It's not part of the plan. So we need to fix that. And we need to have, again, the societal structures we had that taught men agency and taught men consciousness and self-control. You used to go to church and you had to listen to a sermon. You had to listen to music. You had to focus. You had to be in place while you were doing that. You had to have your mind attuned to something. You know, men had dangerous jobs. If you're plowing a field, you got to be focused on making sure you're going forward. You flip that plow, you're going to break your foot. You could get killed. Horse could get spooked and drag you across, and you end up dead. You know, we had dangerous jobs. We had to focus and concentrate. And men who didn't do that didn't make it to adulthood. You know, young boys who didn't do that didn't grow up. And if they did grow up, they probably didn't reproduce because they weren't successful in society. Now, all you have to do is be breathing and you get a vote. You can breathe and you're over the age of 18, you get a vote. You don't need any skin in the game, no demonstrated competency. And your opinion is just as valid as a man who served decades in the military, or a man who has created businesses, or a man who has had more than 10,000 hours helping people to improve their lives and started several businesses and charities. We have a situation that is designed to make it unappealing to young men to take personal responsibility. And then we ask, why aren't men taking personal responsibility? And we need to change those incentives. I think especially libertarians are very big on talking about incentives. We need to change the incentives that young men are facing so that they have obvious benefits to self-leadership and to being part of leadership in their communities.
Sorry, Noah, this question bugs me because it seems to be all that people are obsessed with. You know what the JQ means.
All the right talks about is the JQ. Okay. All the time. It
pisses me off. It's like they're obsessed with Jewish people. Anyway, go ahead.
The answer to the JQ is the same as the answer to the WQ. If you're not familiar with that, that's the woman question. The question is be a man, be high agency, federate with other men, and take no shit, and don't let other people undermine your society. If you do that, you don't have to worry about other cultures undermining your society, because they can't, because you won't tolerate it.
Yeah.
Weak men look for other things to blame as excuses for their problems.
It's deflection. It's you know, I'm responsible for everything wrong on the Australian, right? You two saw Dean and Noah. I purposely put you in the chat so you could see. And it's the same thing, you know. Oh, let's deflect onto the blacks. Let's deflect onto multiculturalism. What are you doing? Come on. Oh,
our ancestors took over the entire known world at one point, even though we were still a tiny minority globally.
My ancestors are Spanish.
Yes. Oh, so our ancestors took over your ancestors. I'm just kidding. Our ancestors were ruling the known world. We've sent people to outer space. We have, you know, we've conquered everything that could be conquered, and then we at some point decided to just give up and let ourselves be conquered. And that attitude is why we're in the situation we're in. We have to, as individuals, as groups, and as nations, we have to realize that if we've got a problem, it's our fault. It doesn't matter if it's actually our fault. We have to look at it as if it's our fault, because otherwise we're not going to take the necessary steps to deal with it.
That's what Riccardo said. He said that earlier, that you choose to get out of the situation. It might not be your fault you're in the situation, but you choose to get out of it.
Are you familiar with Douglas Murray?
I am. Not completely. I know who he is.
Right. Yeah, but he's one of the most erudite, thoughtful, perceptive, informative speakers in
The world?
in the scene. Yeah, and he wrote a book, The Strange Suicide of Europe, The Strange Death of Europe, and I watched an interview with Douglas Murray by Peter Robinson of the Hoover Institution, and I recommend you all your listeners go and watch this. If you want an example of why what you might call the right, I might call a sort of a traditional conservative base with a huge libertarian streak on top, but why we are failing. Now, here's the guy who wrote the book, can explain in exquisite detail the problem, the solution, with wonderfully rounded vowels, and yet at the end of the interview, I wanted to throttle him. I have never met a wimpier response, because Peter Robinson, equally wimpy, and I lost massive respect for both of them, because they threw their hands up and said, oh, what do we do? The West is dying. Oh, well, we just sit back and watch it, because maybe it's all over. I couldn't believe my ears. The two men for whom I previously had massive respect, and I do for their intellect, but zero for their just sheer masculinity, to say, there's a fight, grab your gun, let's go. That's the shortest form of orders you ever get in the military, and that's about it sometimes. And yet these two sat back, threw their hands in the air and said, oh dear me, maybe it's lost, maybe it's the time for the West to die. Now, I've speculated as to why Douglas Murray took that perspective when Peter Robinson took that perspective, but it doesn't help, because I don't care why they took that perspective. Both of them, between them, they don't have a set of stones, because there's something inside a man that says, no, you don't. You know you don't. I don't care what you think. I don't care how many mates you've got. I don't care how many are behind you. I am not going anywhere, and you're going to have to kill me. Now, 99 out of 100, when you see that in your face, they step back. And I've had to do that on a couple of occasions. Not in Australia, faced down a mutiny. And I said to them, form a queue, come at me all at once or one at a time, but I'm going to take down some of you, so you better make it good. And I had a sea of 100 black faces, all take a step forward, and then they took 2 steps back, and then we got back to work. You want to know what's wrong with men? They haven't got balls anymore. And until we grow them again, it's going to be up to a few of us to do the job. And I didn't speak during that one. I
didn't expect you to say that. Does anyone want to answer Sandy's question? Does the culture of toxic masculinity start in universities? Has this filtered down to lower education of the decades? Oh, I think Noah touched on that it's fathers, but does anyone want to further elaborate?
Yeah, I think the culture of toxic masculinity concept, this concept, it started in the Frankfurt School. It didn't start in any specific or in universities in general. It started quite a long time ago, and there is a certain system. Basically, the strategy that works for communists is to undermine everything and then take over it once it collapses. So they create chaos, they destroy everything, and then they live on the rubble. They don't really build anything. They just, scoop the rubble into a pile and live on it. And this is their latest round of opportunities. They destroyed women with feminism. Now they're trying to destroy men with the toxic masculinity thing. There was recently a report. They were saying, men, stop working out because you're intimidating women with your muscles. I've never met a woman that was intimidated by my muscles. Interested and fascinated, yes, not intimidated. And I've never met a woman who says, oh, I hate it when men have muscles, except for the incredibly unattractive, mentally psychotic, and sexually uninteresting women. They don't like it because when men who are physically fit tend to have higher standards for women, and they don't like that they can't meet those standards. But yeah, it comes from a specific attempt to destroy and undermine Western society. If people like the 1950s, I prefer the 1850s myself, height of the Victorian Empire. It was an incredibly masculine time in the West. Men were men, and this is a time of great Western expansion because of that masculinity. It's not that it happened to happen at a certain time where there was some confluence of events. It was because we had masculine cultures where the masculine virtues were appreciated and were promoted in culture. And now we are going to have to promote those virtues ourselves to our own sons, to our friends, and to younger men in our community. I say often that we're going to have a bull run on masculinity because we have a tremendous lack of masculine men, and those who are left will be extremely valuable. So if you're raising your sons to be men, to be masculine, to be strong, to be masters of themselves, masters of violence, masters of peace, those young boys, they're going to be the kings of the next generation, because there will be such a shortage of it. And like you said, Riccardo, the weak men, they back down to the strong men. In society, at a certain point, it comes down to the real power is in the hands of men who are willing to act, and not actually in anyone else's hands. Democracy is an illusion and disappears the moment that times get tough. And we're getting to a point, we've created enough chaos in society by undermining everything, that we're going to go back to that situation where, back to the rule of strong men. I've been predicting warlord America for almost a year now, that at some point we're going to end up having a breakup of some of the bigger countries, and it's going to go back to a situation essentially of warlords. And I see that forming right now with the various militias in the US. At a certain point, it's going to become the dominant military force in the US. And it's interesting to see that when things get bad, we go back to looking to strong men to protect us again.
Just 2 points. The breakup of America and that strongman response, I think that is quite likely in the US, depending on how successful Trump specifically is in the next election in the next 4 years. But back to why the masculinity is being attacked. And you're dead right. It's been an exquisitely designed and executed strategy by foreign communist socialist forces to undermine us. I recommend your listeners, dear, read a book called The Naked Communist, written by a guy called Skousen, who was an FBI undercover agent in the 50s.
Oh, wow.
And he penetrated the US Communist Party, and they had enumerated the 45 goals they needed to achieve to bring down the United States. Because preceding that, there was a fight whether there should be an armed revolution or should there be the slow march through the institutions, which was promoted by Gramsci, a bloody Italian communist, one of my forebears, and I'll punch him in the head when I meet him on the other side. But the 45 goals, if you just Google it, don't have to even buy the book, but I suggest you do, but Google the 45 goals of communism, Skousen, S-K-O-U-S-E-N, and tick off how many they have achieved, because they understood what made the West great better than we did. And they undermined every aspect of it. Masculinity was one, but they would promote everything that would degrade the foundations, and so the entire edifice was collapsing. So young men and women today think they believe what they believe because they're just good people. They couldn't be more wrong. They had been fed a line for decades. Now, I'm lucky. I'm 60 years of age. I was born in 1960. So I grew up, and the characters on TV, the movie stars I watched, were war heroes. The guy that played Sherlock Holmes won a medal in the war. Gene Autry. I mean, a lot of these guys, they were genuine war heroes, and they became actors later. And then we've got actors now that pretend to be heroes. But I grew up with real men who had done real things. And this has been degraded over 5, 6, 7 decades. And so I'm old enough to know what the world used to be like. And it's not a case of in the good old days, but I can tell you what, it was a whole lot nicer and safer going to school in the 60s than it is today. It was just better. We were polite. We were nice. There were dust ups in the yard, and as Noah said, that's where you learn to throw a fist and not take crap. And if you saw some young kid that couldn't handle himself, you stepped in and helped.
Oh.
Life was a whole lot better then than it is now, I can tell you. And there weren't so many screwed up and confused people. And the second point that Noah was making about the strong man, in Australia, what did Winston Churchill say? We're two nations separated by a common language. Is we're very similar, but we're very different. And one of the parts of Australia won, and this is key, and that's what people don't understand about us, and they'll get there slowly. Politics is only part of what our objective is. We're not there to... A woman rang me up and was berating me on the phone the other day, and she said, "Don't you want votes?" And I said, "No." She was utterly confused. And I said, politics is the means to the end. The end is a nation. And I've described it. I won't go into detail here, but I've described the characteristics of that nation. Oh, bugger it, I will. There you go. But Australian is a sovereign, self-reliant, Judeo-Christian Western democracy that is economically powerful, militarily intimidating, politically free, culturally vibrant, and socially cohesive. Now, there's an end state that we're working towards. Now, in order to achieve that, and let me just go all military for you for a moment, okay? We have operations and they're in phases, okay? Phase 1 through 2. And then you synchronize everything you got to do according to those phases. And as an analogy, think about the landing at Normandy to kick the Nazis out of Europe. Now you had the Navy and the Air Force and the Army and the paratroopers and the resistance, and they're all separate lines of operations. Preceding everything, you had the resistance blowing up railway lines so the Germans couldn't reinforce the coast. Then you had the paratroopers seizing key terrain, bridges, hills. And then the Navy would be bombarding the shoreline. And then the Navy would deliver the troops to the beach and away they went. So you got these separate lines of operations. Well, Australia 1 is identical. We're running it like that. So politics is only one part. The next part, and this is in our plan, and you can read it when we publish it, it's to individually empower people so they are able to take control of their lives so they can participate in the reformation of the nation. We're going to reform the country, but you need to lift every individual up in order to do that. You don't want 151 politicians in Canberra who couldn't organise a piss-up in a brewery telling us to do anything. We need to get the individuals empowered. Now imagine 25 million well-empowered individuals who know what it is to live a good life and set a good life and set a good example, directing traffic. It's going to be a whole lot better than we've got now. And so this decades-long program, it's exactly what Noah's talking about. We empower each individual so they can govern themselves, so that collectively they can govern themselves as a nation, if that makes sense to you. It's utterly critical to our future, because if we don't address this on an individual level, and that's part of A1's charter and responsibility, we'll be running leadership training for men and women and families. We'll be going from town to town, and I don't care if there's 5 guys in somebody's garage. I'll be there with my projector and slides, and we'll be taking them through the same leadership stuff that the corporates pay me a lot of money to give them. And house by house, street by street, suburb by suburb, town by town, over the next 4 decades, we're going to so empower this nation that they won't have a problem of what to do. They'll know exactly what to do, how to do it, and get on with their lives. And this will meet Dean's need, because there'll be bugger all politics in it and very few politicians.
Mate, as usual, Riccardo, you and I get along on, I think with about 10% where you and I kind of go, oh, a bit different, bit whatever, mate. And look, and I'm supportive of the A1 project, and, you know, obviously I'm in a different party, but I think the parties share an awful lot of values. And moving forward, it's important that we're willing to work together, and strengthening individuals it's a big part of the whole libertarian thing. You can have the biggest army, but, you know, what's the old saying about an army of sheep led by a lion? It rings true, you know. And at the moment, Australia's we're led by an awful lot of sheep, really. And you look from our Prime Minister down, we lack leadership. From our Premier in Victoria, lacks leadership, doesn't inspire anything. Certainly from what I watch, and it's a real scary time in politics. I got a lot of heat for putting you at number 2. How come we didn't support the Liberals, the Conservatives? I had to try and explain to these poor Conservatives that they haven't conserved anything. They're not conservative. There's nothing conservative about them. And they call themselves the Liberal Party, which the word liberal is far more aligned with where I am politically, and where they were probably when they were founded, but they don't represent that anymore. And I guess the scary thing is, until more guys like yourself and for the little part that I try to play in this area, we're going to allow these people to keep playing these political games. We had all the scandals that went on in Victoria with the Labor Party, yet Dan Andrews, the head of that party, still running the show. He's still got everybody on lockdown, and nobody stood up. And anybody who has stood up's been slapped down. The Liberal Party, who are supposedly conservatives and running the country at a federal level, haven't stepped in and said this is complete nonsense. This is totalitarianism. So they've continued to prove that you and I are sort of certainly on the right track, I think. And while we continue to have a complete lack of leadership in the country, male or female, I had a guy tell me the other day we should let the Labor Party women run everything and everything would be fine. And I wanted to cry. But you know, this is where we're lacking. Australia as a country we need more manufacturing, we need more jobs, we need more creation, we need more freedom so that people can get stronger as individuals. And until we get stronger individuals, what is it? The best way to help poor people? The first step is don't be one.
Hey, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Noah needs to go. He has another appointment or something like that. Did you want to say something before you go, and we'll carry on?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dia. I think the important takeaway from this is that those who don't have leadership and those who want it and those who want to be leaders but are incapable of it can improve. You know, I suggest buying Riccardo's book to learn more about what leadership is, and then get out there where there are men getting stuff done. Go and learn from them, follow them, listen, you know, humble yourself to realize you don't know everything, and follow some men that are capable, and, you know, lend your effort to them in exchange for them mentoring you towards being a better leader yourself. And I think that's really the solution. The takeaway solution from this is that if you want to have leaders, you might have to be the one to step up. If you want to have a leader, you're going to have to learn to follow. And if you want to be a leader, you're first going to have to start as a follower, and you're going to have to work your way up and earn your position as a leader. Thank you very much for having me on, Dia. And I'm looking forward to the next time that we have a chat.
Me too. I'm really thankful to have you three in my life, and I'll see you soon, Noah.
And thanks, Ben. Thanks for talking with you all. Bye.
Thanks, Noah. See you, mate.
Let's continue with all the questions. People have questions now. I know Noah's left, and some of you had questions for Noah, but I'm sorry, he's busy. So tolerance means to put up with stuff you don't like. How is that a virtue? It is at some level, isn't it? I mean, not to put up with like pedophilia or stuff, but like some things is, yeah. Does anyone want to answer that?
Look, I can start on that one, and it comes back to putting up with stuff you don't like. If you don't brush your teeth because you don't like doing it, your teeth fall out. It's all well and good to not do things you don't like, but there are usually consequences that come with that. There's a lot of things I don't like, and if I can not do them, I have to accept and understand what the consequences for those choices will be. But I
like cleaning the house.
Cleaning the house, the consequence is I make Dia do it. Who said that? What?
I've manipulated you. You're a simp. You're a simp.
No, I'm so easily manipulated too. I don't have a mind of my own.
It's
tolerance is a virtue because it takes discipline to do something you don't like. Now, there's always the choice to do it or don't do it, but you've got to be aware of the consequences. So it's still a virtue to be able to discipline yourself to do something you don't want to do. And it's also a consequential choice to accept whatever happens if you choose not to do that thing and it's good for you, or the alternative.
Riccardo, or do you not feel like you need to build on that?
Oh, no, Marcus Aurelius is good on this. I assume when we say we're tolerating something we don't like, we're not talking about obviously illegal things where you're interfering with somebody else's life. But you either put up with people, teach them to be better, or just try to remember what you were like when you were a pain in the ass.
That's all the time.
It's as simple as that. I mean, we all grow up, and what we find intolerable at 10 is different to what we find intolerable at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and away you go. And as Dean said, is exactly right. And we are as one of this. You are free to do whatever the hell you like, as long as you're not interfering with somebody else's liberties, and you don't have to put up with anything. But there is a price to that, because that assumes that you're perfect and they're not. And Noah used the word a little bit of humility. Just understand that everybody's on their own journey. Everyone's at a different place in their life. You were once, as silly as a wheel, according to some people, and now you've got it together, and that's great. But understand that you've got tolerance is a virtue, because that's what makes the world go round. You've got to cooperate. You've got to work with people. Now, if it's intolerable, then you don't tolerate it. You move on. I've got no problem with that as well. But as Dean said, you take responsibility. It's your choice. You can walk away. You can stay. So if you do stay, say, I choose to stay for a bunch of reasons, or I choose to leave for a bunch of reasons. You're not a victim here. You choose to stay because that's your choice. And once you own it, once you own that decision, I choose to stay here. Okay, let me give you a real practical example. I'm working for it's in my book, and it's a conversation. I'm working in a dead-end job, and I don't like my boss, and I'm stuck. Well, leave. Well, I can't. Why not? I've got bills to pay and a family to feed. Well, good, stay then. And so when you realize you are staying for a set of values and a set of reasons, then you're no longer a victim. The whole mindset changes. I am here putting up with this job because it pays the bills, and there's nothing wrong with that. We've all done that. We've all had jobs that paid bills. Welcome to life. And then when you can, you move on. But own the decision. Own the decision.
Yeah.
It frees you up emotionally and mentally and psychologically to then do better. So it's pretty straightforward.
I think this question is to you, Dean. What are the benefits of libertarianism? Because, you guys invented pornography and you're just evil, satanic worshipping people.
The trick of being an atheist is if you don't believe in one, you don't believe in the other. That's sort of it's one of those tricks. It's like the responsibility thing. It's the freedom without responsibility. You can't go, I believe in one and don't believe in the other. Otherwise, you're not really paying attention to the Bible. And I've spent enough time with you two guys to sort of have it. I do have an understanding of it all. I just don't.
Jesus
don't
loves you, Dean.
He's only human. Look, as far as libertarian goes, and I'm sure Riccardo. I mean, Riccardo's got a big libertarian streak as well. So, I mean, the key areas for it, or the most important areas, are the freedom to do whatever you want as long as you're not harming others. There's a couple of people who say, "Don't hurt people, don't steal their stuff." My little slogan, it's going on one of the Resolute TV T-shirts that are getting done up. Do no harm but take no shit. It's just the concept of you're responsible for your life. I shouldn't be in a position to non-voluntarily put myself and my thoughts and my actions on you, and you shouldn't be able to do the same to me. It's a really simple respect system where if I don't non-voluntarily interact with you, and you don't non-voluntarily interact with me, we get along in harmony and everybody moves on. That's the very simple thing. I mean, then you can get into gun debates, weed debates, porn debates, religion debates. I mean, that's all semantics. But when it comes down to it, the very basic core philosophy is do no harm, take no shit, and leave people the hell alone. If you're not hurting anyone else, you should be free to go about your business as you choose.
Agree, I suppose. Riccardo, do you believe that the racial demographics of a country's population is a relevant, even crucial element of that country's politics and culture?
It's a great question. I think the cultural impact is significant. Racial, less so. Racial to the extent that it represents a cultural perspective which is inconsistent with ours. But I've had this discussion before, and I've got a good friend of ours there from Ghana, black as the ace of spades, and put me in the sun for a week and I'm as black as them. But they are really solid Christian people. He's an engineer, she's a nurse. And they're just, I'll have as many of those people as you can get. They're just fantastic. On the other hand, you get some white piece of trash like Tony Jones from the ABC, and racially he's acceptable, but culturally, I find him utterly loathsome. And if we had any more Tony Joneses. So the racial question, I can understand why people focus on it. It's easy to spot, and it does to a degree represent a cultural perspective which is inconsistent with Australia. But that's a dangerous track to wander down, the racial line. For me, it's more it's a cultural issue. Now, having said that, there are groups there is one group that Australia One is very keen not to have too many of, because it does represent an ideology which is completely antithetical to Christian Western democracies. So I'm more than happy to slam the door on certain group. But generally speaking, I like the mix that we're in. We should keep it that way.
Okay. I think this question would have been more Noah related, but I feel like you both will still have good analysis to it. What should a hypothetical man-child do as a first step to be a leader? And I suppose you can answer it because you have a whole bunch in here about it.
It depends on where you are, and the fact that if a guy thinks he's a man-child, he's the first honest man on the planet, because we all are. But we need to, as Noah said, be optimistic about who we are. Look, a guy walks past the mirror. It doesn't matter how bad he looks. He winks and says, "I've still got it." And that's just guys. but we do reflect more than women think we do. And the first step is this: be the man that you want your daughter to marry. So imagine you've got a daughter. What do you expect of that man that comes knocking at your door? Now, she's now 16, 17, and the door knocks start, and I'll be there with a 12 gauge. But you imagine, what sort of man would you want your daughter? Now, if you haven't got one, it's hard to visualize that. But if you've got a daughter, it's very clear what sort of man you want to be taking her out. He has to protect her physically because it's dangerous out there. So he's got to be able to take care of himself and her. And as guys know, it's 90% bullshit anyway. So as long as you look the part, you'll get left alone. I have very few fights. And there's very good reason for that. And the ones that I do have, it's okay. The outcome is satisfactory. Now, so you want him to be able to protect himself, protect her. You want him to be an utter gentleman. You want him to be thoughtful, compassionate, kind, tough, capable. So that's what a hypothetical man-child should do. Become the man you want your daughter to go out with or to marry. And all of a sudden, you'll become the best man on the planet. In my view, look, as a young bloke growing up, and the role models that I had were excellent, were just breathtaking. And when I found a deficiency, the heroic characters in movies and books were my role models. And I would, some of my best friends, and guys go through periods where they don't have a lot of acquaintances or mates or friends, and that's life. But I filled the gap with some of the most amazing heroic characters from books. Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead. And I use those people as my friends and mentors and role models. So I try to emulate the best qualities of fiction and heroic real people, and just be the guy that could both, take out with a sniper's rifle the enemy at 1,000 meters and mix a cocktail and cook a souffle for the bride. Be good at everything. You won't make it, but by Christ, you'll be better than most.
That seems, I'm sorry to say, like a fiction. You didn't see the types of comments that some of these right wingers write. I don't mean to me, I mean to other women as well. But these people treat women not even as equals, but as like CUNTSs and whores and all that kind of stuff. And I just want them to be happy. I just want them to I don't have any hate for anyone. I want them to be happy, but it seems what makes them happy is being consumed by hate.
They're going to bump into themselves in about 10 years when they've got daughters, and they're going to realize what jerks they are. Let me tell you my life. Okay. I cook every meal in the house.
I know. I've cooked your food. I've eaten your food.
So you know one side of me, the Special Forces Light Colonel. But I'm also the guy that cooks every meal in the house for two reasons. One, because my wife suffers from multiple sclerosis and it's hard for her to stand at the stove. And secondly, she's Irish German, which means she can't cook. So the best thing to do is get someone to marry an Italian. So I'm doing that. I do the ironing. I do all those sorts of things because that's my duty. That's my job.
Good husband.
You've got to be a man. You don't call women names, for God's sake. Please. But don't worry about it. People like that, boys like that one day will meet themselves and they will loathe themselves and they'll realize what jerks they are. And he's you might even get an apology in about 20 years, because I remember I got one 20 years after I served with this guy who was just one of those jerks.
Oh, I don't want an apology. I want nothing to do with those people.
No, whether you want it or not, it's not the point. But this guy must have been feeling guilty for 20 years, because he pulled me up one day. I hadn't seen this guy in 20 years. He said, "Oh, mate, I just want to say I'm really sorry." I said, "What for?" "Oh, and he goes, I was a real squib. I was just this, I was that." And I looked at him, and I knew he had been, but I didn't worry about it. You get on with your life. But he'd been eating up this jerk for 20 years. And so don't worry about it. Guys that do that, just dismiss it. They'll grow up one day or they won't. Either way, it doesn't matter to you. It doesn't matter to me.
I just pray for them.
Well, you can do that too. I'm not that Christian. I'll say a nice prayer, but move on. Somebody will take care of them one day. They'll meet somebody bigger, nastier than them. That's the rule. Always understand there's someone bigger, richer, faster, smarter, tougher than you. So be a gentleman to everybody, because you never know who you're going to meet one day, and they'll recalibrate you in a way that's quite unequivocal.
And the other thing regarding that too, and Riccardo's probably noticed it as well, the last probably 6 months, you've grown enormously.
Me?
As a person. Yeah, you. And a lot of that has to do with a bit of a change of layout, a bit of a change of scenery, a bit of a change of the people. You know what's the old saying? If you can't change the people around you, you change the people around you.
Well, I have Dean and Riccardo in my life. My life is pretty good.
That's, you've got some really good people in your life, and I'm just a guy who cooks and does whatever I do. But you've got some really amazing people in your life. You've grown enormously. You've been learning, developing, reading books, and there's a lot to be said for that. So when people try to bring you down, and I've had it, and I'm sure Riccardo's had it. What's one of Riccardo's famous sayings, and forgive me if I get it wrong, is if you're copying flak, you must be over the target. So you're obviously it's a positive. It means that you're changed, and I don't think you've changed as such, but you've grown. And I've seen a massive difference in you in the year or two, 2 years. I think we've been sort of friends now and got along really well. And you've grown enormously as a person. And I think that's a credit to you. And unfortunately, the people that I'm not going to go into name calling and who said what. I don't care about any of that, but I haven't seen a lot of growth out of any of those guys in the interactions I've had with them or what I've seen with them. And that's because they're living in this little bubble whereby they don't really do anything. They're not doing anything. They're just in the bubble. And if calling you nasty names is the closest thing to a political movement they can come up with, they're already lost. They're not really worth worrying about. And and seeing you grow the way you have has been phenomenal. I've been really quite proud of some of the things, other than your inability to cook. I'll have to work on you with that one. But, we're not all perfect like Riccardo and I, of course, who can cook really well.
Do you want to build off of that, Riccardo?
I think he's on the money. It's been a big step forward. But Lyndall has got a great question about mainstream media responsible for promoting toxic culture. Absolutely, yes. But you've got to be aware it comes from everywhere. There is no one on TV you can trust to give you any insight about anything. Every aspect of society in Australia has been bought and paid for by people who want to bring us down. And the media is part of it too. The commercial stations are selling ad space, and they just do what they're told. The ABC, which the Australian people pays for, is the propaganda arm of the Chinese Communist Party. So everything you see and hear on TV is 99% of it's lies. And this first struck me many years ago, because the one thing at that stage I knew backwards was Defence and Foreign Affairs, and I'd watched Defence and Foreign Affairs news broadcasts on TV, and it was mainly wrong, and the rest was bad spin. So that made them make the assumption that most of everything else was wrong and badly spun, and it is. But I say this to people all the time, particularly in relation to the media. Pick the one politician, or more importantly, the one media commentator whom you trust most. Just pick one, and pick one that you really think is the one that's going to tell you the hard truth because it's good for you and you need to know because it's what the media is about. And ask them if they've told you about the bail-in laws, which the government passed, which are the same laws that the EU imposed on its member countries, which means the bank can take your money out of your bank account if the bank looks like failing. And it is illegal. It is illegal to ask where the money went or who took it out. Now, how do I know this? Because a colleague of mine had $750,000 taken out of one of his accounts. This is law in Australia. So every Australian's savings is at risk. Now, which media personality has told you that? And the answer is this. I'll help you with the hard ones. None. So even the alleged good guys like Peter Credle and Andrew Bolt, pick them. I don't care. They're all bought and paid for, and they're either cowards because they're too scared to say the truth because they want their pay packet. Now, nations are not built by cowards who want their pay packet. It's built by people who are willing to risk everything. Now, I don't expect everybody in Australia to do that. But I certainly expect those peons on TV like Credle and Bolt, Murray, and a lot of them who get up there and angrily yell at the TV set, but achieve nothing because they've never told you the whole truth. They want their pay packet. And when those insulting peons say we're all in this together, give me a break. Nobody has suffered. Not one of them, not one politician, not one public servant, not one TV personality. It's an insult. They should shut their overpaid mouths and tell the truth, or just admit to the people what they are. They're just whores. And in fact, that's an insult to whores because whores are more honest about it. They give you sex, you give them money, and everybody walks away happy. But people like Credle and Bolt and Murray are what we call in the game controlled opposition. It gives the people the impression somebody's on their side, but they're not. Because those three, and Alan Jones and all the rest of them, not one has suffered 1 inch. And the only time that gets Andrew Bolt animated is when somebody insults him. Give me a break. This is why if Australia is going to save itself, it needs real leadership, and not from me or Dean or anybody else. Everybody has to step up on their own, and that's what that book is all about. It's all about empowering everybody in the country to step up and do your bit. That's what Australia One's all about. It's to get you stepping up and being able to discern the truth, lead your family, lead your community, lead your electorate, lead the nation. And that's the only thing that's going to get us through, folks, because you look at what's going on in Melbourne with Comrade Dan and his bedfellow, Silent Scott Morrison, all of them, they're all in this together. It is unconstitutional. It is illegal. Every freaking lawyer knows it, but no one's saying anything because they don't want to risk their mortgage payments. They don't want to risk their job. That's for schmucks like Dean and me to do. They're okay. They'll send us over the top in a gallant effort to move their drinks cabinet 6 inches closer to Berlin, to quote Blackadder.
Real men.
But what they don't understand is that in the end, I'm going to come and get them. Because we're going to reveal to the Australian people the hypocrisy that is politics, media, bureaucracy, polity, judiciary, bureaucracy, the lot. They're all bought and paid for, every last one of them, because no one has told you the whole truth. Nobody has told the Australian people the whole truth. And when they discover for themselves, Dean and I will have to hold them back because they'll be there with torches and pitchforks. Because when they find out the ugly truth of what's been going on and what's being concealed in this nation, they will be horrified at first and then bloody angry after that. And that's our job. And I'll be there in a coalition government with the Libertarians and Australia One, and we'll clean this toilet.
Bloody oath. I'll
tell you one outlet that has discussed the bail-in laws, Riccardo. Resolute TV has discussed it on numerous occasions. I don't know if you know the bloke involved in that or anybody else who's been involved in that little project, but we've discussed it quite a few times.
I'm one of the editors.
If I first woke up to the bail-in laws when it all happened to Greece, I don't know if you recall when the Greece market collapsed and people were lining up at ATMs and couldn't get any money out, and they were all quite shocked. I had X amount of dollars in my bank and blah 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 blah, and all of a sudden they go to line up because the economy collapsed. So let's get what we can get out, and all the banks were empty, and nobody could work out why, and nobody got any permission why. And those laws are in over here, and people go, oh well, cashless society will be great. Right up until they decide you're not the citizen that they want you to be, you're not obedient enough, or the banks are going to fail, or whatever other reason suits we'll call them the powers that be, our grand masters and overlords. And instead of having to come for our cash where they've got to look you or I or anyone else in the eye while stealing our money, they'll just turn the computer off. Delete. There you've got 750 grand in the bank. It's a key on a computer. You know, that's why I and part of Resolute, we've been looking into Bitcoins. We've been looking into gold. Well, we're starting to look into gold and silver for Series 2. Physical cash. There's got to be alternative ways. And all this cardless or cashless society stuff does is it makes you more beholden and you're more owned by the powers that be. And if more people knew about it, mate, you're right, they'd be pitchforking and raging. And I talk about it and they all think I'm a little bit mad because I'm the odd man out and I'm probably a little bit colourful and mad. But you're 100% correct. More of us need to be talking about these things. We need to get it out there. We need to let people know. And anybody who's watching this program at the moment, if you don't know what it is, you need to look at it. It's the ultimate slap in the face to anybody who's ever worked for a living, anybody who's ever created something, built something, done something, to know that with a click of a keyboard, the banks and the governments can collude, which we already know they're doing, and they can take whatever they want, whenever they want, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. It's disgusting and wrong.
How do we fight back? Because it says here, this is a good question.
Okay, how do we fight back? Well, that's exactly what Dean and the Libertarians are doing, and what my team and me are doing at Australia One. The phase we are at is we are building. You can't invade Europe in 1939 because there isn't any organisation to do it. It takes organisation, planning and skill to do this properly. You can have your little protest of 200 people and the cops will turn up, throw you to the deck and arrest you more violently than they arrested the pedophiles. Did you see that on TV? No. Did you see it on YouTube? There was some young lady that was thrown to the deck absolutely violently by 4 coppers. And you compare that to how they arrested the pedophiles, and it was nice and polite because they've been told to do what they've been told to do. How do we fight back? We organise, and when we have our protest rally, it'll be 200,000, and the coppers cannot arrest us. It'll be as simple as that. When we arrive, when we do it, we're going to do this properly. So that's point number 1. Let's go fast forward a bit now. Those of you who are familiar with the US amendments to the US Constitution, the first is the freedom of speech and the second is the right to bear arms. Now, let me just explain that, because the question specifically said we don't have rifles, how do we fight? Well, I'm not suggesting we have an armed revolution because too many people die. But here's the point. Here's the point. They have the monopoly on lethal force. And that's why the coppers can be as rude to us as they are. Now, I'm not having a go at, average plot. I'm talking about the Commissioner of Police. They've got a pay rise while other people are suffering in order to crack down like he's a Nazi. I'm talking about Patton in Victoria. Now, here's a little message for the coppers around the country, starting from the Chief Commissioners down. The Nuremberg defence of I was doing my duty didn't wash in the court of law.
You wrote that.
And so when we do get out there, we're going to have every camera rolling and we're going to hold every individual accountable. And if they follow an unlawful command, they will be held personally liable, and we will take them to court and take their house from them. There is no getting away from this. This is how we fight. Phase 1, you film everything and hold them personally accountable. And that's from the police commissioner down. Because when Australia One gets into government, I can tell you what we'll be doing. There'll be an inquiry into COVID, into the institutional response by government, the bureaucracy and the police. And each individual that broke the law because they were following an unlawful order, they'll be paying privately. There'll be no collective hearing. So from Scott Morrison down to Senior Constable Plod in Victoria, best watch your step, because when the Australian people get cranky, they're slow to anger, but when they get cranky, they get very cranky. And the last point is about the right to bear arms. I believe Australians should have the right to bear arms. We should be able to protect ourselves. That doesn't mean we each have nuclear weapons. That could be a bit untidy. But the old saying goes that when seconds count, the coppers are just minutes away. Well, that's not good enough. That is not good enough. Particularly when people have to understand the reasons that citizens should have weapons to protect themselves isn't against crooks. It's against the government. That's the reason the Second Amendment exists. The Americans do not trust the government, and I certainly don't trust the government. Why should I trust Scott Morrison, who is the leader of a party who in 2004 put a 90-year suppression order on a list of 28 VIP pedophiles, including a former Prime Minister and judges. Why should I trust them? Why should I trust them on anything? On COVID, when they do that, give me a break. They are completely unworthy of trust, and we should be able to remove them if we see fit. And if that requires us to squeeze a trigger in the future, well, maybe that's what we need to do, because the alternative is to have the Chinese Communist Party flying in its stocks of equipment into Melbourne, which is going on right now. Aircraft after aircraft after aircraft is landing at Tullamarine full of boxes of stuff that I can't imagine what might in there. AI, cameras, facial recognition. No, of course not. But Comrade Dan is covering that up. He was actually at the airport to greet the aircraft. Now, what the hell would a premier be doing at the airport to greet aircraft?
Yeah.
Social distancing, mate. Social distancing.
Yeah.
You know, mate. And look, and I don't know. Well, you and I are usually in the same ballpark, but I've had people say to me, we need more government because, you know, people aren't inherently good. People are bad and they're negative, and we need the government to make sure that the bad people. It's like the government are the bad people, or they're becoming. Not all of them. I'm sure there's some in there that are relatively nice or whatever. But in and of overall, the problem with government is it's run by people. So you've got individuals who may or may not be scrupulous. They may or may not mean well. But when you've got certain people ruling over other people, you're always in a hole where you're at the mercy of people who may or may not be good people. So it's very hard to work out how big government should be. I'd like it to be an absolute minimal. And now the anarchistic side of things says have no government. Just no government whatsoever, and obviously with other countries that do have governments, that's impossible, but it really should be a bare minimum, and they should really only ever do what citizens are not capable of doing for themselves. Anything more than that's overreach, anything more than that's sticking your nose in where it doesn't belong. We don't need all the extra nonsense. We really need to settle things down to where government only provides whatever can't be provided by the citizen, by yourself or myself or whoever else. But yeah, look, that's sort of the long and the short of it. Our government's highly untrustworthy, and it doesn't matter. You can look at scandal.
Tell them the story about honey.
The story about honey. Oh, look, that's like
that's
right,
a good story.
No problem. I have some excess honey, chef. Like that's sort of part of the world.
Which I helped with.
Yes, I put Miss Muffet here in charge of helping me bottle it because we had some excess honey. Now, I don't have hives or anything like that, but I did have, I think, about 15, 20 kilos of honey that we bottled up, and I put an ad on buy, swap, and sell honey for X amount of dollars. Come and collect jars. Within 20 minutes, we had, yeah, this sounds great. Can I come around tomorrow? Yeah, no problem. Whoever the guy was, I think I screenshotted it, whatever. The next day, the guy shows up, and he's from the Department of biosecurity or some absolute rubbish. And for the record, where I reside is a hell of a long way from anywhere. And this guy showed up, and I sort of, oh, hey mate, how you going? Well, where are your hives? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, you're selling honey, so you must have hives. I think the guy thought he was in a movie, you know, like a big sting, big bust. He'd found a guy with illegal hives because apparently you need a permit to have hives. Couldn't give them monkeys. Don't have any hives. Not interested, mate. He said, this is the equivalent of people selling each other fruit and vegetables, and that's going to be illegal soon too. And this poor little Nazi wannabe is just determined to have their finger in every pie and control everything they possibly can. And the problem is, I suppose, the scope is so huge. Where do you start? These guys have time, money, effort, and resources to waste on a $6 jar of honey, all the way through to your bail-in laws where they can take everything you've worked for and everything you've tried to achieve. So scary times, guys. And you know, this is about what was the official topic? Why the right has man children. You know, people need to start focusing on bigger ticket items, not worrying about whether or not Dee is a horrible person or hurt their feelings, or whether I'm a potato-headed bastard with, you know, whatever. There are far bigger issues going on.
Yeah, I leak information. I leak information to Antifa. Like it's so fun for me.
Antifa, glorified toilet brush cleaners, but. You know, look, they make a lot of noise, but they're not really, you know, let's be fair, they're George Soros paid dickheads. That's what they're
and I'm getting a cut.
if George Soros wants to give me $1 million, I'll take it, and then I'll spend it on, I don't know, something, beer, whatever. Government will take it. Who cares? The point is, with all that sort of nonsense, is it's nonsense, and I'd like to see more of the right wing. Now, I'm not a right winger. I'm probably middle range. I'm very conservative. No, I'm conservative when it comes to finances, because I think if the government's going to take our money, they should be bloody responsible for it, because, well, they forcibly take it from us. And socially, I don't think it's any politician or government agency's job to go in your bedroom, tell you whether or not you can smoke pot or not, as long as you're not physically harming anybody else. It's nobody's business. But I think it's time that the right got focused. The left is kicking the right's ass. I believe it's totalitarianism versus freedom now. I don't think right and left really matters, because the extreme right behave like the extreme left. They just use different arguments. They believe that the government's just as important, just should be in control of just as much. The only difference being the right seems to think the government should be in control of certain things, and the left think that the government should be in control of other things. I think the government needs to be held accountable regardless, and really shouldn't be in control of very bloody much at all. They can't fix potholes, let alone run the country. So hopefully the right can get a little bit serious, have a bit of a reevaluate, work out why the left has been so successful. And like it or not, they have been, because our Australian Conservative Party is really, it's as left-wing as the Labor Party was 20 years ago. So the Conservative representatives, other than people like Riccardo and Pauline Hanson and a few others, are essentially left-wing now in the old dynamic. So the left has won well and truly. Question is, are you going to continue to argue about it on Facebook? Or, is there going to be a little bit of movement in the station, a little bit of unity, a little bit of actual practical work?
I just got a text from Riccardo's wife, and the computer decided to start doing its update. So he was just going to come back in, but it looks like, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to come back in. But let's just finish off with a few more questions, because I don't want any.
Going from a three-man band to a one-man band.
I know. I'm
actually
annoyed. I'm a little annoyed that Noah always has to leave early. Next time I'm going to book him for more than the hour, because I think I wrote an hour for the booking and I should have written 2 hours. Okay. So Pissy Leaks Pete asks, to get more apolitical people onto the right side of the equation, as in awake, would the situation be a lot more harsher?
I think I know what he means, and I think
it's just not written properly.
It's. I mean, I'm not in Melbourne, but from what I've seen, can it get much more harsher? How much more are you going to tolerate down there? It's a police state, and they use all this nonsense about COVID, which I don't personally think that there's not a virus. I do think there is a virus. I do think that it is making people sick. I do think it's overblown. I do think it's exaggerated. I guess relative to Pissy Leaks Pete's question, and you might have a different view there. I'm sure Riccardo would have a slightly different view as well. But the question has to be, how much more are you guys going to accept? Well, we keep accepting it. We keep letting them do it. We keep towing the line. When do we stand up and say, yeah, that's not happening anymore? Sorry, guys.
Will the panel see? The panel's gone. It was just stuck with Dean. Will the
sorry, guys. I'm a downgrade on the other two. I'm not a life coach, and I'm not an ex-military man. I'm a very good-looking chef.
You're a good man. Will the panel entertain the thought that the political system as a democracy by which the ordinary people can participate is dead? These people are being given instructions from outside their nations.
It is dead. The fact that we are forced to vote at the threat of a fine means you're voting under duress anyway, which in and of itself means it's not a true democracy in that concept. You should be eligible to go, I don't think any of these people are worthy of my vote, therefore I'm not taking the time to do it. Now, you're eligible to donkey vote, of course, but that doesn't perpetuate or that doesn't solve the problem really by donkey voting. And the gun to your head there is the $50 fine or whatever, $100 fine or whatever it is now if you don't do so. As for people getting out of the instructions from elsewhere, I've got no doubt whatsoever that the WHO should be defunded, and the United Nations, we certainly shouldn't be participating in either organisation. I made that clear in all my election campaign stuff. I'm anti-United Nations and I'm anti-World Health Organization. I really don't think we should be playing ball with those guys, but as Riccardo earlier said, our politicians are bought and paid for by those guys. So we are essentially being run by unelected bureaucrats, and it's a terrifying thought, mate.
How do we get rid of party agendas and return the country to the people? Excuse me.
What have you been doing? Drinking? It's not Bearing's video. You shouldn't be drunk.
Oh my God! Yay!
Oh, yeah, sorry. Look, as far as a party of agendas, all these. Hey, back.
It's better when Riccardo's here. Sorry, dude.
I don't disagree. I have a world of respect for Riccardo, as everybody knows.
I love Riccardo.
How do we get rid of party agendas? I guess, Sandy, that's an awkward question, mate, because all parties have to have agendas. The question is, are they genuine agendas? Are they public agendas? Are they actually standing for what their members and the people want? Or are they running secret backdoor agendas that are dictated by the United Nations? That's the hard part. It's that accountability and the clarity that I think most of these political parties miss. We look at certainly the big four, and I went hard at them in my election campaign. The big four, I was throwing shade at them all day long because, as far as I'm concerned, they're all fairly close to rotten to the core. Take out a few good people who are trying, and they say we're going to fix it from the inside. They've been trying to fix it from the inside forever. The problem you've got is we don't know the mechanism.
Maybe he meant evil agendas.
Well, you know, the hard part is, you know, like people would say Riccardo's A1 party platform is an evil agenda. They could say my Libertarian party platform is an evil agenda. That's all down to perception. The question is, I mean, all of our policies are online. They're all open. They're clear as a bell. We don't hide from any of them. We don't have any hidden agendas. You know, and we're fairly upfront with where we are and what we're doing. What do you think, Riccardo? Now that you're back, they've heard me. You were on for a couple of minutes.
The mechanism, we've got several mechanisms to ensure that the high level of democratic participation we have in the A1 Constitution is safe. What we're doing is, and the key one is this: recall elections. So if you have a candidate, or you have a branch president, or you have a state president, or even a federal director that is not meeting the needs of the electors 24/7, then if you get 10% of the membership deciding that this person needs to be recalled, they get sacked and you get to re-elect another member. That way we have not only the politicians, and we're going to introduce this as a national policy as well. So anybody in any electorate around the country can recall their policy. So instead of being responsive to the electors once every 3 years at election time, where they make a ton of promises and nothing happens, they are responsive to you 24/7. So if a local representative distresses his or her electorate by decisions that they are making, then that electorate can recall that individual MP, sack them, and then re-elect another one. And there's a very short, sharp, practical answer to how you keep the representatives of the people accountable to the people, 24/7, 365.
I don't know if this is a real question, but it's for you, Dean. How does an individual with no friends, I don't think it's a real question, stop 50 black guys taking his stuff if we want it? I don't know if that's a hater.
I like the Stan Tookie Williams logo too. That's pretty funny and kind of cool, mate. You can't. You know, like people say to me, if you remove government, how would you replace it? How would you protect the vulnerable? How would you do X, Y, Z? Well, you hope strong men protect the vulnerable, and you also have to come up with the fact that, based on the current gun laws, I don't have firearms in my home. So no, look, if 50 black guys show up and say they're taking my shit, I'll. And I was actually the victim of a robbery many years ago. I had 4. They weren't black,
Blacks.
but you know they were certainly of a different nationality. And I got my ass whooped. I got one, and I got him fairly well, and I got a little scar out of the 4, and they got my wallet and whatever, and it was a wild little affair. And I, you know, there's only so much you can do. If the gun laws are free and clear, well, if you want to come to my house with 50 black guys, and I'll fire until I'm out of ammunition, if that's how we're going to play that game. But the reality of it is we've all got to be responsible for ourselves, and you're responsible for protecting your home and your family and all these sort of things. It doesn't matter how many friends you do or don't have. I don't collect friends. I mean, I've got some people on my Facebook I don't know, but I just sort of go, yeah, whatever. It's obviously people either looking at the message or they think I'm mad.
You have friends. I've seen them.
They follow me around. It's people like you, you know.
I don't follow you. This is a lefty, but I don't think he has a proper grasp on Trump. But I think it's fair that I put up a lefty question as well. What are your thoughts on Trump's rhetoric starting a race war because he can't contain his hate? Does anyone want to respond?
No, yeah, I'll take that one on.
Okay.
I dedicated my book to Donald Trump, and in the front of the book,
Did you?
which I sent to him, in saving the United States, he saved the world. What you got to understand is what you're watching about Trump being a race baiter. If you go online and check, you'll find ample evidence that he was loved by blacks and everybody else until he ran for the Republican Party. He was given a medal for the work he did with inner city youth. Rosa Parks was there at the medal ceremony, as was Muhammad Ali. So if you don't know who Rosa Parks is, you should look her up.
Back of the bus.
Back of the bus, that's it. And if you look it up, you'll find that Trump isn't race baiting at all. It's a setup. There is ample evidence. If you're watching mainstream news or the ABC or anybody else, you'll get nothing but 24/7 Trump's a problem. If you do your own independent investigation, and don't believe me, do your own research, you'll find that much of what you have been told about Trump is largely untrue. Whether the guy is lucid or not is not the point. The fact is, he has done more in his short time in the presidency to improve the status of blacks. He has done more to improve the status of Hispanics. He has arrested more sex trafficking, those that traffic children, than in his first term than Obama did in both terms. In fact, he did more in the first 12 months than Obama did in his whole presidency. So there's a lot of good things that Trump does that doesn't get reported because there's an agenda, and you've got to be smart enough to look beyond the agenda. It's just simple stuff. If you do your own research, you'll find out the ones that are hating him, and he wasn't hated until he ran as a Republican, and all of a sudden he's the worst guy on the planet. What you will find about the race war, though, you'll find out that Oprah Winfrey's best mate in Brazil, who was recently arrested, was actually one of the worst child traffickers on the planet, a guy called John of God. You know, it's a con. You've really got to look behind the news, do your own research, believe nobody, trust no one. But do your own research, and you'll come to the conclusion that, guess what, you're being lied to. And if not on Trump, I could tell you there's so much you're being lied to about Donald Trump. So yeah, no, he's not race baiting anybody. He's got ample photographs of and evidence of those that have supported him for decades and decades from all walks of life, all colours, all races, the lot. So he's not a race baiter at all. There's not a racist bone in his body.
No, that's very true. Dean, do I mooch off you? There's a lot of comments that I couch surf and that I mooch off friends.
You mooch? No, I give you a big long job list, and if they're not done, you're taken to the back room and flogged. That's how it works, isn't it?
No.
People worried about any financial arrangement between anybody really is nothing more than a gossip. It's
none of their business.
That's exactly right. Now
this is what men on the right do. They gossip like little women. This is just what Noah was saying. It's off-putting.
Obviously, I've had plenty of questions about your staying here, which is I'm quite happy to have you here. There's a spare
separate
room.
bedrooms.
There's plenty of room in the house. I'm really here. Not that it's anybody's business. She certainly covers her own costs, and how she makes a living is, I'm not going to tell anybody, because you've already had problems with people, again, being nosy and sticking their nose in and causing problems with employment and putting jobs at risk. So as far as I'm concerned, the gossipy little crybabies can gossip till their hearts are content. I've got no problem with you being here. You pay your way. You're more than an adult, other than your inability to cook. And stop being fucking gossips. What is wrong with you people?
Yeah, let's move on. Rob Files, how do you feel about martial law in Melbourne, on the Melbourne streets, Riccardo? Well, you said before it's illegal and you're angry about it.
Oh yeah, no, they've gone beyond the realms of common sense. They've broken many laws, and we're currently compiling a list of what they've actually done wrong, and we'll be broadcasting that once we're sufficiently certain we've got it right. There's an aspect of that, though, that I find deeply troubling as a former soldier, a retired soldier, and that's the use of the military. Now, let me explain something, how the military assists civilians. People have got to understand that the military aren't there to fight bushfires or, cart water during droughts and stuff like that. We do that because we can, and it's a useful resource. But the military's job is to deliver lethal force. It's a last resort. We're there to kill people. That's it. Finish. Bust. That's the purpose of the military. And you've got to get that in your head. That's point number one. Point number two, there are two ways that we formally assist a government, whether it's the federal or state. And there are two classifications. One is Defence Force aid to the civil power, and the other is Defence Force aid to the civil community. Defence Force aid to the civil power is where there is a siege hostage situation, let's say, and it's beyond the police capability to resolve it. Now, it remains a police responsibility. The military has no particular authority. If I grabbed a weapon in the street and wandered down the road, I'd be arrested because it's illegal. I can't do it. Soldiers haven't got authority to do that in Australia. Different overseas, but not in Australia. So Defence Force aid to the civil power, where the government formally requests assistance from the Defence Force. And it's a formal request. It's a very specific process, because it's a very dangerous thing to tell the soldier to deliver lethal force within any Australian jurisdiction. So there's a very formal process. Only once the police recognise the situation is beyond their capacity to resolve, we are then given authority to act. We act, and as soon as it's over, then it becomes basically like any crime scene where the soldier has to justify what actions he took. And let me give you an example. He will point out that I shot that man with that weapon because he pointed that weapon at me and was about to shoot. So it was an act of self-defense. So they have to justify everything they do. So that's Defence Force aid to the civil power. No problem. Siege hostage, in extremist situations, delivery of lethal force required. Not negotiation. We don't negotiate. We negotiate with a 7.62 round or a 5.56 round. That's how we negotiate. The second category is Defence Force aid to the civil community. Now, that is where we do assist with droughts, bushfires, any other sort of civil disaster. They have no authority to do anything. They have no special authority. Do you remember when Cyclone Tracy, you're probably too young to remember this, but when Cyclone Tracy hit Darwin and the place was devastated, General Alan Stretton decided to take charge and start fixing the town up. Now, he had no authority to do that. And the local town councillors and they got quite cranky because he had no authority to do it. So he just bustled his way in and got things rolling and eventually started cooperating with the civil community. But he had no authority. No soldier has authority. I don't care what his rank is. He has no authority in Australia to give orders to any civilian. Now, here's the dangerous part. So you know that there's two parts I've told you about. Defence Force aid to the civil power, Defence Force aid to the civil community. And I apologise if this is a long-winded answer, but you must understand this. In my opinion, the reason that Scott Morrison has troops on the street and that coward, General Angus Campbell, the Chief of the Defence Force, the man who's still waiting for his stones to drop, allowing this to happen, they are normalising uniformed soldiers on the street so that people think that they have some authority. Now, soldiers can be deputised, but this is a psychological operation to prepare the people for uniforms on the street. And instead of seeing the Australian soldier as something that's proud and worthwhile because they defend us, they're turning them something to be terrified of. And the social consequences are quite significant. And that gutless wonder, Angus Campbell, whom I know personally, should have said to the Minister for Defence and the Prime Minister, Prime Minister and Minister of Defence, I find this inappropriate, an inappropriate use of soldiers. There is no actual need for them to be there. The police are more than capable of handling it. And if you persist with this, I will resign and have a press conference outlining the fact that what you are doing is morally reprehensible. But of course he wouldn't do that because he's the man that he is. But that's the point. Seeing soldiers on the street accompanying police is grossly offensive to the Australian character. It is grossly offensive to the Australian military, and it should never have happened. So that's a very long answer to a very good question. You've got to understand this. It's not martial law, but they are preparing you for it. They are terrifying you to stay in your street. And if you see, Corporal Kafups wandering down the road, you're not supposed to be frightened of him. He's supposed to be there to help you. But they are successfully turning the Australian soldier into an arm of political activism. And what they're doing is they're shutting down the rights of citizens and using the Defence Force to do it. And I find it utterly disgusting.
I appreciate the passion on that. So this is a question specifically for you. To what party will your preferences go, and what do you think of GAP, GAP, and other constitutional parties? Good
question. At the Eden Monaro by-election, I split my preferences. If the voter wanted to preference Liberal, they voted one side of the how to vote card. If they wanted to preference Labor, they voted the other side of the how to vote card. When I was asked specifically to whom do I preference, I put the answer, and this was quoted in the Canberra Times, I want to burn both Liberal and Labor parties to the ground, because they are both complicit in the destruction of this nation. They have been since at least 1980, when they did a review of the new international economic order, which was the beginning of the one world currency, the destruction of Australia's manufacturing, the destruction of Australia's economy. This has been going on for decades, and both parties have been utterly complicit. So both those parties are appalling, and whatever you think they used to be, they are not. They are no longer. They haven't been for some time. So both those parties are dead in the water, and they will sink under their own corruption when it gets revealed.
There's another. Oh yeah, yeah, sorry, yeah. And who will your preferences go to?
Yeah,
or the GAP.
Yeah, the GAP. The GAP didn't assist me. I'm a big fan of helping friends. The GAP didn't assist me. They couldn't, but they didn't.
Oh.
So I wish them well, but the proof's in the pudding. You want friends? I had a bunch of GAP people on Twitter telling me, support us, support us. Well, how about right back at you, fellas? I didn't get squat. So thanks very much for that. I will remember you. I have a very long memory. Maybe it's the Italian mafia in me that does that. But if you want me to preference you and be nice to you, see that gentleman up there with the big punching kangaroo up there? He gave me his number 2 and I gave him my number 2, not because we did a deal, because I respect the man. I really do. And that's why he got my number 2. That's the way I work. But if people want to put their hand out and say, hey, Rick, give me a hand, I say, really? Well, I needed a hand a little while ago. I had people come down from Queensland as well. I had people drive up from Victoria as well. We had a mum come down with her husband and 2 kids, and they drove all the way down to the southeast of the state. That's the sort of passion we want. I'm not doing deals. I don't do deals. I look at the man, I look at the woman, I look at their track record, I look at who they are. We don't preference parties, we preference individuals. Now, because I preference Dean, because I respect Dean, the DLP could put up another candidate and I'd look at the individual and say, I'm sorry, you don't get my vote. And that's the way we swing. It gets back to giving the power to the people, not parties. We're a party because we have to be a party, because we have to coalesce and organise. But I tell you what, I expect feisty arguments within A1, as long as they're within the bounds of our aims and objectives and policies. I expect fights and arguments and passionate debates, because that's what Australians have to learn to do to lead this country. And they have to lead from the bottom up. They choose their candidates, the candidates get up, and the candidates have to represent the people.
Aussie Mozzie. Ozzy, why do you always do this? You always ask these questions. I mean, you're right. It's true that one group can be criticized and the other one, you get thrown in prison for asking questions about it. At least in Germany and Canada you do. But I don't know why it always comes down to this in my live streams. Does anyone want to respond to that? Why is it okay to criticize China and the CCP but not Zionism in Israel?
I personally have no problem with you criticizing anybody. As long as you're as a fair and balanced criticism. I don't really care. I'm not a fan of the CCP at all. I've never been a huge student of Israel, which many people in this live stream are always a bit shocked that I'm not really wound up on the whole Jew thing. I know some Jews. Some are really nice. Some are assholes, like every other race and mob on the planet. I know some Chinese people, and some are really nice, and some are some complete dickheads that I don't like. And you know, I try to treat people as the individual. So, mate, criticise whoever you like. I've got no issue with criticising blacks, whites, greens, monkeys, uncles, women.
But
men,
he's not
trans,
wrong. Judicially, it's true that if you question the Holocaust or whatever, you can be thrown in prison. You have a right to question whatever you like. If you don't,
right.
Yeah, that's his point. I think he wants to know why you think that happens on a legal level.
Well, because
that is true.
Our governments and powers that be are essentially rotten to the core, and it's, you know, and that's why they do these deals and they have these arrangements in place. And some things are acceptable to governments. I'm sure money changes hands, control changes hands, power changes hands. Who's funding what? All stuff that's outside my sort of above my pay grade. Oh, hang on, I do all this for free. So most of it's above my pay grade. But
and I help you
from my
for free.
personal perspective, criticise whoever you like. I'm not offended when I hear somebody, and I've seen your live chats there. If somebody says, "Oh, the Jew did this," I don't know. Well, look, I don't know that particular Jew. I don't know what he did or he didn't do. I treat people as individuals, and I'd like to see more people do that as well. You know, people should treat me as I am, not because I'm a 3/4 bogan Aussie with Scottish Irish background, and I've got a head like a god. I'm not even sure what culture I look like I come from, but judge individuals, judge people, not, you know, the CCP or Israel's or, you know, whoever. The fact that it's mandated is wrong.
Riccardo?
Yeah, no, exactly. Dean's on the money again. I'm a big fan of free speech. I'm right out there on the extreme edge. Say what you like, as long as you're not destroying people's lives. And just be aware that the government also banned a pro-life speaker coming to Australia. Now, get this: you can have any sort of extremists claiming that people should be killed in the name of their particular god, but this brilliant government of ours banned a pro-life speaker coming out. Now, what does that tell you about the agenda that's driving these imbeciles in government? Seriously, you don't need an IQ of 150 to figure out that something's going on. It's not about free speech or protecting anybody. All they're doing is they're following somebody's orders. And again, what the Australian population have to slowly wake up to, and most people listening to this channel probably know this, but you don't get to be Prime Minister, you don't get to be Premier unless you are allowed to be. And I'm not talking you get the vote of your members. There are people running this country that aren't politicians, and they follow orders. And you don't get to be in a position of power unless you're allowed to be in a position of power, and they follow orders. What other explanation could there possibly be to stop a pro-life speaker coming to Australia? Have a think about it. Wow. What the least offensive thing can you possibly mention? And yet, everything else is fair game. You know, give me a break. There's an agenda here, folks. Wake up, burn all the major parties to the ground, Liberal, Labor, National Greens. If you want to look at why Australia's in such an awful state, those four have been in power for decades. The Greens, especially at the council level, working their way up until the LNP and the Labor LP in federal parliament, all the way up and down. These bastards have been in control, and the ship is sinking. And Australians will eventually wake up, sack them, get rid of them.
Well, it's watching them argue over which one's better or which one's least. Or I had a great conversation the other day with a young bloke who he's still in that little socialisty bubble kind of in his head. But we had a bit of a chat, and we had a very reasonable discussion, you'll be pleased to know, because they say, you know, when you're a youngster. No, he was a young socialist. He's okay. Look, Baden's great for a debate sometimes, and sometimes he gets a bit much, and you know, that's fine. And sometimes it's good fun. He's a nice kid, he really is. But this other young bloke, and he's still in that socialist, you know, he thinks he's doing the right thing, and he thinks it's all hard. And he used the phrase to me, the Labor Party's the lesser of the two evils. And every time I hear that, I just think, no, they're all just one big evil, and they just change the logo every so often, just so that you lot all stay confused enough to keep voting them into power. That's all it is. We disagree on this and this and this, and that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, the machinations of power are these four parties sharing the power relative to their position. Obviously, the Greens do the council local level stuff. Nats are sort of a bit the same, and then you've got the two big parties sharing the top top job. And you're just changing a red jumper for a green jumper, or a red jumper for a blue jumper, and there's no actual validity or character behind it. It's just the same shit. Fascist or anti-fascist?
Yeah, you can answer that in seconds, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't like fascists. I don't like Nazis. I don't like anybody telling anybody else what to do. I'd be the worst fascist ever, because I don't want to control anybody. I've got no interest in ruling anybody. Happy to work with just about anybody, but I've got no interest in controlling anybody. So that should sort of clarify where I sit on that scheme. As for the anti-fascists singing, dancing, and making an awful lot of noise, they're pretty embarrassing and really should possibly, some of them, get haircuts, have a shower, and consider getting jobs would be a good idea for some of them. But that's the show.
Can you mute yourself for a second, because it's really going crazy on your end, Dean? So just mute yourself while I'm about to answer this question. Actually, I sound fine at the moment. Bieber anti-fascist. I have moderators for my chat. I am not anti-free speech, but as my friend and mentor James Fox Higgins says, it's my chat and it's my backyard, it's my room, and I will be treated with respect. So if someone deems your rhetoric or anyone's rhetoric to be disrespectful, I won't allow it, and I won't be, I don't deserve to be disrespected. So that has nothing to do with free speech, generally speaking, because on a general level, I don't block people just because. And also I've seen what you've said in other places, and you often say that I blocked you because of Zionism, and that's just not true. I blocked you because you were rude. And all right, let's go to real questions, and we'll finish up in the next, I think, 5 minutes. Give me a second. Dia, could you ask your guest if he could give any type of explanation as to why white cops are showing the supremacy sign? Oh, because that one cop did that? No. Does anyone want to respond to that? That's just, dude, you're too much in your lefty bubble. Someone?
Well, yeah, that's. I mean, one cop does whatever. It's, again, it comes down to the individual, and white supremacy signs is what's this sign? What's this sign? That sign actually used to mean, I've been scuba diving a couple of times, and it actually is a sign that you're okay underwater. So look, a lot of this stuff's just so far out of control. It's not funny. It's all nonsense.
You don't really want to respond to that, do you, Riccardo? It's just silly, right? Okay, let's go to this one. Oh, that wasn't to any of you. Sorry. All right, I think sorry, because it said Sonic at the end. Oh, this one? This is the last question, everyone, because I want to go to sleep. WRT preferences to Riccardo Bosi. Will you give them to a party for the betterment of Australians, whether you have a personal bias against them or not? Example, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Not an unreasonable question.
No, that's not unreasonable at all. Whichever party is the best for Australia gets our preferences. It's as simple as that. But once again, it'll be individual by individual, because there's some One Nation supporters which are just fantastic. I have no problem giving them a preference. There are others that are complete ratbags. And it'll be electorate by electorate proposition. No deals done with any party leader. As I said, I'd back Dean any time of the day. I can't say that for every LDP member, although I like them a lot, but we'll just look at each one. So it comes back to that level of individual consideration for the voters of that electorate. Why should I impose upon an electorate a representative who's a ratbag just because he has the right logo next to him? And let me give you a practical example. What I keep telling my people is this, and I get a number of calls from people saying, hey, look, I'd like to be a candidate. I want to be a candidate. Here's $50,000. Here's $100,000. Can I have a Senate ticket, please? And I say to them, look, that's not how we roll. You want to be a candidate, Go start a branch, then get the support of the other branches, because the members of that electorate will elect their candidate. Head office doesn't parachute anybody into the job. The electorate gets to elect their representative. So work your electorate for 2 years. You know, run sausage sizzles at Bunnings to raise money for the swing set for the kids of the cancer ward. And that's the example I always use, because that's the level of commitment we need from our representatives. And that's what I expect from our allies. So the enemy of my enemy is still an enemy if he's a jerk. So I keep telling our people, earn the right to wear that A1 badge. But when it comes to election time, I want them to vote for you because they know, like, and trust you, not because it's got an A1 next to your name, but because you've been there serving your community for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years. I don't care what it is, but they're voting for you because they know, like, and trust you. That's the only way that people can control this nation. The moment we hand it over to a party or a preference system, whatever, we're stuffed. We go back to the old world. This is the new world. We're doing things differently, and it's going to take decades. I get that. This is a decades-long program that we're setting up here. We have no problem with it. I've got nowhere else to go, and I'm not handing Australia over to a bunch of socialists, that's for sure. So we're committed to making sure that we slowly and in a measured way empower each individual to the best of their individual ability to take control of their suburb, their electorate, and then by doing so, the country. And they know their MP, and they will know, like, and trust their MP, and their MP will be worthy of that vote. So there you go.
Cool. Well, I think we're done. I think we've had a lovely long stream. Next time, hopefully, I can get Noah for a little bit longer because this stream was his idea. But everyone, I'm getting a couple of text messages from some of you. Yes, I will put Riccardo Bosi's link to his book in the description box below. And I'll put the links of the 3 guests that I had today also in the description box below. I am on DLive, but I don't know how to connect my DLive account to my YouTube account to go live on both platforms. I've asked for help, but no one's helped me. But anyway, we'll figure it out because I know YouTube won't house us for very long. Yeah, so everyone buy Riccardo's book. I'm allowed to have an autographed copy, none of you. No, just kidding. And thank you to Noah for coming on my show. Thank you to Dean for, like, just everything, life. And thank you to Riccardo for being an amazing mentor. All together with you 3, there's you all in one, you make an amazing husband.
There are many ways to respond to that, dear, but I'll let that one go through to the keeper.
I'm just trying to be funny. Oh, by the way, Riccardo.
I've warned you about funny. That's not your thing.
No, that's not true. Riccardo, okay, you say I'm not funny, but Riccardo was laughing so much the other day when we were having dinner. But I don't know if it was at or with, but I made him laugh. Didn't I? Didn't I make you laugh at dinner? At lunch. It was lunch.
All five of us had a giggle when I said I'm laughing at you, not with you, dear.
She's far better at being funny when she's not trying, I've found.
Oh, yeah.
What was the name of the new show that you wanted me? Because I was trying to explain it to Dean and it didn't make sense to him. What was the new show that you designed for me? You, me, a car park outside? Was that what it was?
Oh, yeah, that's right. New live stream that Dear's putting out. It'll be You, Me, Car Park Now. A controversial look at everything.
Oh,
dear.
All right. Well, I'll let you all go. Thank you so much. And Riccardo, you owe me a singular live stream so we can talk about this in greater detail because I wasn't able to use the whole. Slideshow that I had, and it's better to discuss that one-on-one anyway. But it was a good backdrop to base the show on for today. It worked.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it. It'll be fun. We can get into more depth onto those big questions.
Yes. All right, cool. Well, bye, everyone. Thank you for watching. Tune in next week and stay tuned to Resolute TV.
See you guys. Thanks.
Bye. I'm going to end the broadcast
See you
now.
later.